Okay. Welcome everybody to Ultimate Sensei Season 2. I can hear myself.
Ultimate Sensei Season 2.
At least that means I've got audio, right? At least we've got audio. Okay. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to an entirely new event, which we did not have in Season 1 of Ultimate Sensei. This is the Viewer Showcase. And this event is basically two events rolled into one. there's not any particular cohesion between the two things that you're going to see today. But nevertheless, we're rolling them into one big event for today. It's going to be completely different and hopefully interesting. So let me flash up a card for you so those of you who prefer to read over listening can sort of hear along as I explain today's format. The first part of today's format is going to be a series of 10-minute lessons. So each of the students is going to have the opportunity to come on and provide a lesson for all of you for 10 minutes. It could be about anything that they've learned or thought about or explored chess-wise during the course of Ultimate Sensei Season 2. So it's not going to be, a book they read 7 years ago, unless for some reason they've been thinking about it again this past month or two. But yeah, they'll each get to do a lesson. That lesson will be judged by me. I didn't have the time, resources, money to bring in a huge, teaching, judging panel. So it's just going to be done by me. The scoring today is going to be, a little bit casual, and the students know that. We have $600 in prizes, as you can see on the side, that's going to be allocated to teams based on individual performances today. And, I could have spent all that money just on bringing in judges. So I'd rather give it to the students and do the work myself, or the teams. They could elect to send it to their coaches. So I will judge their lesson on a scale of 1 to 5 points. And that is the first thing. They'll probably mostly be screen sharing something for you all to see. And they all knew about this and were able to prepare their lessons. It's not just sort of like, hey, Dripman, welcome to today's show. Could you just teach the people something? So how will I judge the lesson is a pretty good question. I could maybe go into that for about 15 seconds now and then maybe more later on today. But, I've spent a lot of time teaching, a lot of time watching lessons, a lot of time watching other teachers. And I'll be judging it on a mix of, how well I think they understand what they're trying to teach and how likely people watching are to understand it afterwards if they didn't know about it already. So, for example, I see BG Cube in chat, who's not one of the students. So if BG Cube watches a lesson from MorphyFan, I'm going to be imagining in my head how well is BG Cube likely to be understanding and retaining the material that MorphyFan presents to him. So it's going to sort of vaguely be in that direction. And then the second thing that we're going to have today, and we'll have more time to get into that maybe, but this format is kind of simpler. It's a 2-game exhibition match. The players will be playing 2-game matches against each other in 2 weeks when we get to the Ultimate Sensei finale. The difference will be that then there will be a tiebreak. A match won't be able to end 1-1. Today, a match can end 1-1. And I think we've got another show at 3 o'clock, so, the matches have to end at 3 o'clock. I think Costa is doing commentary on the Pan Ams today, and we all want to watch that. So there'll be a 2-game exhibition match. If it ends tied, that's fine. The time control will be 15 plus 5, just like in the draft tournament and just like in the finale in 2 weeks. And the students will just score points in that match equal to the points they score in the games in that match. So if they tie a match 1-1, each student will get a point. And if a student wins a match 2-0, they will get 2 points. And I'll add that to their lesson score. And as usually happens with like lesson scoring, like realistically, the lessons are more likely to be, from 2 to 5 than from 1 to 5. 1 would really be, the student would sort of have not shown up to give the lesson or something like that. So I think that although one seems to be worth 5 points and the other seems to be worth two, it'll be a similar spread. It'll work out somewhat, this event sort of, showcases more the students' learning and a little bit less the competitive side. So the scoring is not as mathematically clear as in like a tournament event. But I've prepared the students for that, and I'm expecting minimum griping on that subject. So that is our format today. I hope you are all ready because the instruction is going to start right now. So, if you think you've got something to learn from these people, you can take out your thinking caps or a pen and pad to take some notes, and we will be getting into the lessons right away. So let me introduce you to Morphifan, if I can pull this up correctly. There we go. Greetings, Lars. Welcome.
Hey.
Nice to have you here on
Yeah.
the dojo. And you were randomly selected to go first. I hope there's not any major like advantage or disadvantage for going first or last, but I picked the names quite randomly.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Am I good to start whenever, or
You
you
are
let me know
good to
when?
start whenever. We can see you and hear you chat. If you cannot see or hear Lars, let me know and I'll try to make adjustments on the fly.
All right. So I'm Lars, as you all know, and I'm here to teach a lesson on something that Andres and I have been talking about quite a bit, actually, as this competition's gone on. And that's sort of about the need for perseverance and I guess a lack of giving up when in a lost position. This is something that actually arose right out of my first out of the first tournament, when I was playing Blue Jay, actually. When we were doing the analysis, the post game analysis, and I had made this E5 move, and I made a comment. I knew instantly actually that it was a blunder because I immediately saw like the tactical refutation after I played it, and I mean it's such an obvious blunder. But my comment to Andrews at the time was I just about hit the resign button, and it's very common for me to resign early in games. I didn't in this tournament because at the end of the day, I wanted to show that I had like a fighting mentality and I wanted to be picked. So I played on and I managed to win this game in the end. So I guess the first thing that I learned from this is we don't want to give up and we need to start looking for chances to turn a game around. And I actually didn't play this game with the attitude that I could turn it around. Actually, I just sort of got lucky and my opponent either finger slipped or he just missed a tactic or missed that his queen would have been checked. And I turned the game around. There's not a whole lot to learn from this, other than we need to change our attitude and we need to approach the game in a different way. So I'm going to actually now go to a game I played over the board in December. And it was played in classical time controls. And this was a game I played, it would have been 2 to 3 weeks ago. And actually, it's just sort of my standard Nimzo Indian that I play, my F3 Nimzo Indian. And I immediately blow like the opening that I always play. And here I should have played D5. So immediately I am in a game where I don't know what I'm doing. And it was really important for me at this point because Queen A5 came and I had no idea how to approach this situation. I always play D5. I had no idea how to think about this, and I started like digging deep and just sort of trying to remember what I understand about when a queen comes to A5 in Nimzo Indian structures. And in a lot of the structures I end up playing, we sometimes sacrifice the pawn on C3, and we try to gain tempi. So this was something we ended up talking about after the fact as well. I've talked with Andres about this game, but the plan that I came up with, because essentially I sat here for about 5 to 10 minutes trying to figure out what I was going to do to right the wrong, because I had no idea what I was doing at this point. And actually, I just sort of decided that I was going to sacrifice this pawn and try to play for getting some sort of initiative, getting my pieces out, and playing for practical chances. Practical chances in this case probably weren't needed. I think the engine suggested move is just this, which I feel is really lame. It's not my style of play, so I didn't play that. I played e3, and with the attitude that I was going to sacrifice this pawn on c3. I was going to play bishop d2 with a tempi, and we're going to have all my pieces are going to start coming out with some energy. And I was going to make up for the fact that I'm down a pawn. This isn't the engine best move, but I think from a practical standpoint, it ended up working out okay for me. A suggestion that Andrus had made actually was to just play d5 here. And again, with the same idea, we're sacrificing this pawn, and we may even sacrifice the c4 pawn as well, because what we're going to do is we're going to play bishop d2, we're going to play e4, and everything is coming out with a lot of energy, and we're going to have at least a practical chance to build up an attack and kick the queen around a whole bunch. So I guess what's important to understand is that when things are going wrong for us, we don't just give up. We try to find a different way to think about the position. We try to find we play chess. We don't quit on the spot. We're going to fight for the win. And in this game, my opponent ends up getting kicked around quite a bit. The knight comes out to e2. My bishop comes out to f4. You see the queen is getting kicked around all over the place. Yes, this comes with a check backwards, but I have this another attack on the queen. And at this point, actually, I just want to talk about this. This pawn cannot be taken, because if this pawn is taken, the rook can come, and we now have an attack on the king coming. So this was another little piece of bait that we had in the position. Pardon me, I just lost my train of thought. So yes, at this point, when I played bishop f4, there's also this square here, and I'm like a really big fan of putting my pieces on like either the d3 or the d6 square. It's actually something Paul Morphy did. I've seen it in a few of his games. It's an amazing thing, but it essentially restricts development, and we will see throughout this game that the development of black is restricted, and their ability to put their pieces on the best squares is highly restricted. And even though my opening is completely blown and I'm down a bunch of pawns, I now have at least a chance to play a game of chess. And again, this queen check comes. We move the king to f2. We're just trying to get all of our king to safety and all of our pieces out. And ultimately, you'll see that this becomes a really wild, a really chaotic game. It's a huge mess. And we end up drawing the position. But there is one other instructive moment I wanted to mention in this game. And it's just that I didn't really have to accept the draw here, I don't believe. There's still an opportunity, actually. So one of the instructive things that Andrus had pointed out to me is that black really has no way to improve its pieces at this point. I have a pretty clear space advantage. There's no real way, if he doesn't accept the draw here, if black chooses to play on, there's no real way to get their pieces out and actually improve it. And white actually, even though I have a knight on f2, a bishop on c1, and a rook on h1, I can play h4, I can get all my pieces out still. And I can still play for practical chances, where black has sort of reached their maximum potential because there's nowhere to actually put these pieces right now. So I guess from the standpoint is, even though everything went wrong right from move 1, or move 5, I guess, I was able to turn this game around and actually pull out a draw. And this was actually against a 1900 over the board, so I was playing up at the time. And that's just sort of something we talked about, is like trying to find ways to find practical chances in positions when you've blown it. And then I just have one final game that I'd like to talk about. Again, this was played over the board here in Calgary, and it was in another rated game, another classical game. And this is just a position that I'm sure if we took 30 seconds and if you just thought about this position, I'm pretty sure you could tell me who is winning this game based on that. So I'll give you 30 seconds. You tell me who's winning. It's not really difficult to figure out who's winning in this position. So I guess if you were to turn the engine on at this point, it would probably give you like an evaluation of like +6, +7. for white. As you can see, like there's a Death Star, as I like to call it, of pieces that are all here. We have a pass pawn that's coming down the board. My position here is completely blown. So it was at this point where I decided that if I'm going to try to play for practical chances, the only thing that I could see that was weak on the board was the king is by itself. Now, objectively, this position is totally losing, and it doesn't matter what I play. If I can sit and I can let my opponent beat me to death, or I can try to play for practical chances. And I'd like you to ask yourself what you would play in this position. I'll give you 15 seconds. Again, we're just looking for some way to attack this king. And because we're time constrained, I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time to think about it. So now if we're going to continue on, I will tell you what I played. I started hurling pawns down the board because the only practical chance that you have is if you're going to open this king up. And there's also a psychological aspect when, humans don't play like computers, they play like humans. So when they see things coming at them, they start worrying about the things coming at them. And this is, again, something that I've learned from, watching Andrew stream. I've watched and I've learned from talking with him. We're going for attacks when we're down and we're losing. The engine suggests trading off all my pieces and accepting the fact that I've lost this game. That's not how I play. That's not how I think. So instead, I played the h5 to just try to provoke the king side and open things up. And my opponent played h4, and actually I'm just going to switch over to the game. I'll tell you right now that even though white is completely winning here, they go on to lose this game. So h4 or h5 comes, h4, and then again I play a move that is worse than the engine suggested move, which is to trade off all my pieces. Again, trading the knight. I play the immediately awfully losing g5. But at the end of the day, this is the only chance that we have, is opening up the king. And my opponent in this position completely froze. They had 20 minutes on the clock. They spent 10 minutes. Now, this is a move that if you are going to, I think if you're going to find the refutation of this move, you're going to find it in 30 seconds, which is just to take the pawn. And when we analyzed the game afterwards, FIDE Master Dale Hazel was walking around and he was looking at our board when we were analyzing it. And he's just like, why didn't white take the pawn? It was so immediately obvious to him. But psychologically, this h5 move had given pause to my opponent, and then the g5 move just completely froze him. And I go on to win this game. I think it was with either mate in one or the queen has to be given up to avoid it. And that's because my opponent doesn't find the right refutation to this move. They play knight e4 instead of just taking the pawn. And all of a sudden, you can see like that Death Star is broken up. Pieces are flying all over the board. There's now, I'm getting tempy. The king is opened up. And we make this trade, knight for bishop trade. Looks great, I guess, but now everything around the white king is open, and I've gone from being completely lost to at least having a chance to draw this game. So I guess what we need to learn, and what I've learned from Andrus in this, is that if I'm like in a lost position, it's not immediately resignable. There's always still chances. You just have to think about them, and you have to realize that your opponent is not the computer. They are not Gary Kasparov, as he likes to say. You have to realize that there's always a chance to turn things around. And I guess that's sort of the basis of my lesson today. I just wanted to talk about perseverance and fighting on, even though things look completely hopeless.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Morphe fan. Wonderful. Next up, we have Falk. Should be waiting in the wings, so put us here. We'll go to our slideshow for a second, and see if I can get Falk in here. Und los geht's. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to our viewer showcase. Um, sorry, let me switch the name here. But I introduce you to Falk, um, representing Team Kostya. And Falk is going to take over now and give the next lesson. So go for it.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Let me say it like ahead of time. I have everything in a lead chess study, so no one has to take any notes, I guess, and I can share it afterwards. So yeah, in like the last like 5 weeks or so, I spent a lot of time working on chess structures that arise from like the openings that I play, and that's why like my lesson today is about the Maroczy structure. It's basically the structure you guys can see on the screen right now. It's usually called the Maroczy bind, and it's characterized by white having pawns on c4 and e4, and white has this huge central control over the light squares and a lot of space in the position. And whereas black has traded his c pawn for the d pawn of white. And yeah, just in general, we can already see that white has like this huge space advantage. And one move which black would like to get in the Sicilian usually is this, give me some, like this is this d5 break. And as we can see, since white has this control, and usually white also has a knight on c3, this d5 break is just not going to happen in the Maroczy bind. And yeah, so they're like two different, still like a lot of people play this from the black side and a lot of people play this from the white side. Today I wanted to focus more a bit on like a few of white's plans and ideas. And yeah, in general, since like for black, since he has less space, he wants to trade pieces. It's very logical because if you look at the board, black only basically has 3 ranks that he can offer to his own pieces. And the more pieces you have, the more clutter it's going to get. So you just want to trade off pieces and make sure you have like fewer pieces on the board that you can put on better squares. And yeah, usually black goes for like black's play is usually focused either on the queen side, and he like combined with like the pawn break of a6 b5, or he can focus in some lines on an f pawn break and focus play on the king side. Today we will see a plan where it was where black executed the plan on the queen side, and yeah, white on the other hand has to, like, white's goal is, since he has so much space to work with, is to constrict black's play and plans. So for example, if we look at this a6 b5 break, a very typical thing you would see in a lot of those Maroczy structures is that white plays b3 and a4 because it like offers more control of this b5 square, and with a knight on c3 you have like this supreme control over the position. And yeah, white's plan is also usually involving some idea of like f4 f5 to gain more space and to sometimes break on the king side. And usually black in those kind of positions places a bishop on e6, so it's also like a nice bonus if you can kick the bishop or yeah, force it to go to a square. And yeah, let me see. Okay, so today we will see a game from Peter Lecko against Ivanchuk. They played a rapid game in 2007, and that's what I'm going to show you guys. The Maroczy bind can occur from like a bunch of different openings, like the King's Indian, I don't know, the Accelerated Dragon, the English. It can also happen in like reverse colors if you have like the reverse Sicilian. And yeah, this is like the most typical move order to reach this position. And oops, and already here, I mean, we're not going to focus too much on the opening, but Peter Lecko played bishop e2 here. Another move that's kind of funny nowadays, it's not super popular, but it's an idea. It's like white can also go knight c2 already. Like we see that white could already try to counteract black's plan of trading pieces, right, by just ducking the knight away and like not offering this piece trade. But yeah, instead here he went bishop e2. So now we get this typical exchange of knights in the accelerated dragon, because black again wants to get rid of the pieces. And yeah, then we get a few more moves in. Now we reach like this very typical position in this Maroczy bind structure, where again white has all those has all this control over the light squares, and yeah, black has like already managed to get rid, so to say, of one knight, and here like something which may seem counterintuitive is like in this kind of in this type of position, black also often wants to get rid of the dark square bishop, and yeah, that's what we're going to see in this game too. Yeah, Ivanchuk played here queen a5, which nowadays is not the most popular plan. Usually people go for stuff which involves a5 and then like a4 to counteract the pawn formation we saw earlier with a4 and b3, like to get in this queenside push earlier and to be able to put up more pressure without black being able to stop it. And yeah, so in this game we saw this queen a5 move, which is also like a very typical move. Nothing is wrong with it really. Castle c just develops normally, bishop e6, and now we can see black starting to already put pressure on the c file or on the c pawn. So white usually plays b3 in those positions, and here brings the f rook over to c8, which might seem a bit counterintuitive. Like some people, I've at first thought, oh, why doesn't he bring over the a rook? Again, usually what you see is here, the plan is to go a6, b5, and then you open up the a file, so you kind of want your rook to already be on a8, right? Like if you put the rook to c8 right now, the a rook, then you would put it away from the potentially open a file later on. So yeah, we get this, this rook to c8, and Peter Leko just played rook fc1. And again, this is like still a very typical and normal position for this opening. And here Ivanchuk played kind of an interesting move, which looks like it plays according to black's plans, right? He forces an exchange of pieces. But again, here he already might have had like better chances if he goes for the more concrete idea of a6, b5, and like bringing the rook to b8 first and then pushing the pawn, because otherwise he might run into some problems, which we will see in the game. Yeah, so here Ivanchuk played knight g4, and as I said, this forces an exchange of minor pieces. So it's kind of what black is like following the original idea of getting rid of the pieces. And now we see very nice move by Peter Leko. Here, if you look a bit at the position, you will notice that, I mean, at first, this dark square bishop of white might seem really strong because all the pawns are on the light squares. And yeah, so why would you exchange it? But after like exchanging the bishops, here we see that we kind of have like a middle game where white has like the superior minor piece, because I mean, where is this bishop even going to go? Like the usual square is like bishop e6 here, or he might have some ideas of bishop d7 to c6, but it's also like kind of counterintuitive since he already places rooks on the queen side and he would want to push this with a6, b5. So it's a bit, so white has definitely got the better minor piece in this case. And yeah, and we can now see that again, like from in the following moves, we will see that a lot of white's play really erodes around the b5 square, like controlling it. So yeah, we see bishop e6, like trying to improve the bishop. Well, it wasn't doing much on g4. And now you place rook ab1.
Falk, you have another 2 minutes, okay?
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice the time. Yeah, so maybe one point here is that, so in the game, Ivanchuk played a6, but here he had this very nice idea of queen a3, again, blockading this idea that we saw earlier with a4, like to prevent white from reaching the structure, which he kind of missed. And yeah, he played a6. and then Peter Leko gets this a4 move in. So we can see that he kind of almost achieved what we looked at earlier, right? It's only missing like f4, and then he has like all the space and a very solid structure, where it's like super difficult for white to achieve anything. And yeah, here we have some more moves, and here he made like small like a mistake in a sense, because now black has this tactical shot, if you want to say so. Like what black should do in those positions is like basically on every move you kind of have to figure out if you can make b5 work, because otherwise you're just going to be worse. And here he had like a nice tactical shot with b5, because after all the pawns are gone, the queen and rook are aligned for a skewer. So some moves happen here, and then we would have this. So this would be equalizing for black. But yeah, here he played rook c5, and eventually after a few more moves, it was a rapid game, so mistakes are bound to happen. He kind of got his rook trapped and put on a bad square. So now like this b5 move is never going to happen, and basically black is just worse. And yeah, here after some moves, he made the mistake of getting the rook trapped. Like now, I guess he missed 95. So here black has to take, and now the rook is kind of trapped. And yeah, this is basically just game over now. After a few more moves, it was he resigned, I think. Yeah, he resigned. Because now after queen f4 check, king h1, this is like just lost. Yeah. So yeah, what I kind of wanted to mention was that it's a nice idea to know this kind of structure in the Maroczy from the white side. And it's important to play with space and be aware of this 95 idea. And yeah, I hope I could get some points across.
Yeah, thank you very much, Falk. Good recap at the end there about what we were supposed to get out of the lesson.
Oh yeah, I can also share the lead chess study if anyone actually wants to look at this.
Excellent. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you're going to be allowed to send the link.
I can't.
But if you whisper it to maybe Kostya or Hoki or Mitch, maybe Ahmad
sure,
would be able to post it for you. And now we're going to make a little switch over to Seth. So
yeah, thanks. Bye, everybody. Let me stop this.
Okay, so let me make the switch over here. I'll admit Seth in. We'll get Seth set up with a screen share. Thank you, Falk. Good job.
I think there was over a bit bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
Was a bit time pressure, but yeah, good luck, Seth. Bye.
All right, thanks. Is your dad
All right. So right now, folks, you can hear my voice, but not Seth's. Seth will let me know if he wants to set up a screen share or something else. And I will give you all a chance to see the standings from the Endgame Challenge for anybody who missed it 2 weeks ago. That was one of our updates. This event. These points look confusing. They don't look quite right. I don't know what happened. The player points are correct. Dripman won the tournament, and Seth, who we're about to hear from, finished in second place with 4 points. The points on the team standings don't actually make sense here. Sorry about that, folks. But the team standings were... Oh, yeah, the team standings got completely mixed up. That's my mistake. But that is the order in which the teams finished. So teams Andras and Kostya did finish tied for first place. I messed up the points. And yeah, sorry about that. I don't know how I did it so messed up. Yeah, Seth, you'll just let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay.
You are good because I don't see a screen share yet.
Oh, I don't. Sorry, I didn't know. Okay. Share screen. You want me to do that?
If you want, I mean, if that's part of
I
the.
do want to share a screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to share.
Okay. Um. All right. So now we'll switch over to our situation like this. I'll introduce everybody to Seth Lichtenstein from Team Matt. How's it going, Seth?
It's going good. Hello, everyone.
Oh, you just switched your window to yourself. So now we've got
Oh, jeez.
a mirror hall
I won't move. I won't do it again.
of ourselves.
I was thinking it was like a tab, but it's not. It's the whole. Okay. Now I know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure they're saying hi back to you. You're popular in the dojo.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. Yeah, just whenever I'm ready.
Yeah. Go for it when you're ready.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm honored to be here and to talk with all of you. Today we're going to discuss a topic that I think I'm pretty confident, feel confident when I say that every single chess player can work on and would like to get better at, and that's calculation. So, um, for myself, in general, I've been this is one of the main things I've sort of felt has been the most thing that has been most important for improving my play that I've worked with my coach, Matus Kolosowski, and in general. And I've definitely heard this comment from, say, David watching my games and dojo tournaments and stuff, is that I will sometimes have a tendency just like to play on general principle, sort of generally, as David would say. And one thing I could help is finding the moments to find concrete calculation. And one of my problems is that calculation is probably not my strength. So our team, me and Ty, my teammate, been working on calculation. Ty's going to talk more about some of his work with calculating for strategic purposes and when it's important to calculate. And I'm going to just share a technique that Matt has shared with me about calculating, and that is called the stepping stones technique, is the name for it. Matt read this from Yakov Agard, who got the name and the concept from Jonathan Tisdall's Improve Your Chess Now book. So I'll just tell you that's where it comes from. And the basic idea here is that we want to find the position. We're going to do, I should have said, I meant to introduce it. All right, so there's a position on the screen. This is a puzzle. It's white to play and win. So while you're talking, we're gonna use this technique on this puzzle. If you get it in the chat, write it down, keep it to yourself, let other people have a chance at it. And I'm going to kind of show you, this was something that came up in my regular tactical exercise that I do. And I'm going to show you kind of how I was able to apply this new technique to solve kind of a difficult puzzle for me. All right, so you want to find the position. So if you're calculating multiple lines, the idea of the stepping stones is to pick a step that has the most critical point in your calculation and fix that position in your mind. So this is a bit of an exercise in visualization, all right? And then you want to fix that position in your mind. So instead of it now being, say, 3 ply deep or whatever, this is the new position from which you are searching for your new candidate moves. Hoping this is everyone's following so far. So for instance, here we have a puzzle, white to play and win. All right, so when you look at this puzzle, you like anything, you make your candidate moves. And well, first you survey the position. You'll notice white is down a minor piece and a rook. So significant material deficit. If they have anything, we're probably looking for an attack on the king here. And so immediately your first candidate move has to be the cool sacrifice queen f7. So that's what so when I was doing the puzzle, I knew like queen f7, and I knew since it was a puzzle,
was probably the solution. However, I was working on calculating, so I was trying to, really visualize the whole thing. Another thing I've been working on, writing down the lines, making sure I'm making I'm taking care of all the possibilities in my calculation, being thorough. And also, I've now, and we want to think of this as a technique that we can apply to our own games. So you want to sort of treat it like the puzzle like a position in a game, or as I like to say now, treat every puzzle as if David Proust gave it to you. So if you saw the tactics challenge, you'll get that. Uh, so so Queen F7 is the first most obvious thing we need to check. And then there's a series of pretty forced moves after that. So if you can visualize for yourselves, I don't want to put it on the board yet. Maybe I'll do the arrow thing. All right, Queen F7, King F7 is forced. Then we have Bishop E6, check. All right, and King F6, only move for black. Then we have this E5 check, which looks really promising, and is, because if knight takes or pawn takes, your most natural responses, if you can see in your head, maybe give you a few seconds, there's a mate in one on the board right here. So I'll leave that for the people for a sec. This would be like the pause your video moment. All right, and so knight e4 here, if you found it in those few seconds, good job. Knight e4 would be checkmate if they play either of these captures. All right, so I'm going to take those arrows off. So the line we need to calculate now is queen takes f7, king takes f7, bishop e6. I'm just putting this back on the board for the arrows. E5, and the only move black has to avoid getting mated is king takes e5. Immediately mated, I should say. All right, so this now would be the stepping stone position. Because after this, we know our principles of, like, if we're attacking the king, we want to keep attacking, we want to keep gaining tempo. But now we have a few, so that's gotten us to this force sequence. But now we have a situation where we have a few candidates. All right, so give like 30 seconds. I got a little timer here. 30 seconds and see what you can come up with. This is really the critical position if you want to solve this puzzle. So in your minds, we should have the king on e5, the bishop that's on h3 has gone to e6, and the pawn on e4 is now off the board. Otherwise, we have the position in front of us, unless I forgot something. All right, there's my timer going off. All right, so some of your candidate moves here, you might have considered f4 check. I know this was what was going on in my mind. F4 check was like the most obvious to me. But as I was calculating it, well, if the king tries to go back to f6, we got mate in one. However, there's this flying the ointment, no matter which checks you try, f4 or bishop f4, there's this king d4 move. All right, I'm gonna take the arrows off. Okay, so let's put it on the board now. All right, this is all pretty forced. All right, and now I'm thinking, like, I wanna play king f4 or bishop f4. Now, bishop f4 is not my first choice because the bishop is doing a good job of restricting the king where it's at. But, oh, and then also, of course, rook e1. And every time black's only move is king d4. And so after spending several minutes of looking at this and, like, not ever getting the king, he always got away. Just like he had one square every time. He'd run to the other side to the a file usually, and then I couldn't mate him. We know we're playing for mate. So at this point, I'm getting desperate. I need to find one more candidate move. I need to cut the king off. And if you have this position fixed in your mind, you can find the move, or at least I could. Otherwise, no chance. All right. And I give another 30 seconds since we're on time constraint here. Anyone thinks so there's I've told you the problem is that the king is running to d4. So how do we stop him from doing that? My timer failed here, but a few more seconds on that. And if you think about it, and if you spend exhaustively, oh, there it goes. Oops, sorry. All right. If you thought about this exhaustive, if you, like I did, and you really looked at all the checks, the king always got away, you find the solution here, which is rook d1, this beautiful move here. Just cutting off the king, and black is helpless. There's no move here. Now we can execute our plan of get back to our forcing moves. There's nothing here, so at this point, the best move for black is to go back to f6, and that leads to the sequence. Now we're back to a nice force sequence. Knight e4, king e5. Better remember it. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I wrote down the first moves thinking I would remember this part, but
Time. Nobody will ever know the answer to the puzzle.
All right. So yeah, I'm sorry. So bishop f4 and then f3 is checkmate on the board. The only other try here is if they don't play king f6, they do something else. We have f4 check, and followed by the knight e4 mate that was the problem before. So let's just say they play some nothing move, because there's no move that they can make to make room for the king. So I'll just finally wrap up the puzzle here. This is mate. All right. So at that point, right? So using the stepping stones method, this is a puzzle that, like, if you're in puzzle world, maybe you just start with king f7 and you follow it, and then maybe you get to the position, and then you maybe find the move at the critical point. But in a game, we don't have that luxury. So the reason this technique is good is for practical calculation, right? You want to play something in a game, and my partner's going to talk more about that later, right? And one of the problems I've had oftentimes is I will dismiss something sort of out of hand because at one point it looks unfeasible or undesirable. And oftentimes, they say always go one deeper. Well, sometimes you need to stop in a position and fix that position and try to and then the solution becomes, then you have a new set of candidate moves. This becomes a more feasible task than trying to keep it all from the beginning in your mind, having to recalculate. And in a game, of course, we're constrained by time. So for practical purposes, this is a good time to maybe improve your calculation efficiency, which is definitely something I need to work on. So in conclusion, I hope this is just one thing you can try to improve your chess and your calculation. One technique here is an example in a puzzle. This actually came from a game that's very hard to find on the internet, but it actually happened. So this is not just in puzzle world, right? And hopefully you have gained something that you can apply to your own chess and use to because if you're like me, calculation is your first and second priority as a chess improver.
Cool. Thank you so much, Seth. And if you want to somehow share the game in chat later on today, at any point in the next hour or two, if you have a way to share it, I'm sure people would. There's a few people who would like to see the game. Thank you for the lesson. Yeah. To any of the other students who are listening, waiting in the wings to do their lessons, I'm sorry I didn't build like a 2-minute transition in, and so everything's going to be derailed by a few minutes. Hopefully that doesn't throw you all for the greatest loops. And yeah, we're going to do another transition here. So I'm going to get Rangao in here next. And as I do, you can see the final standings in the Tactics Challenge, which also have been updated in the past week or so because Chess Numbers Ty, who had finished second in the preliminary stages with a score of 37, Rangao faced off in place of aka Blue Jay with Chess Numbers, and Chess Numbers was able to win our Tactics Challenge. So now he is officially first place in the Tactics Challenge. Officially gets one of those top seeds in the finals in 2 weeks, and secures the $300 first prize for Team Matt. And Seth, if you could just leave the call for about half an hour, it'll rearrange my windows, hopefully, so I've got Eric in the right spot. All right. So, yeah. So here you guys can see the standings from that Insane Tactics Challenge. Dritman maybe dodged a bullet that day by not being there for that thing. No, I'm kidding. Dritman would have loved it. Dritman's got no problem with something too hard being thrown in his face. Rangao, are you going to be using a screen share or some other?
Yeah, I'm gonna share the screen so I can show you the chessboard and the document.
Okay, cool. Go for it. Very nice, Dritman. I will switch to our scene with you and make sure that everything looks good. Here we are. Oh, I didn't change the name yet. So many pieces to do. But anyway, here, everybody, we are joined by Rangao, aka Blue Jay's replacement on Team Sasha. Yeah, Rangao's been in here for a couple weeks now, had a chance to play in the Endgame Challenge. And yeah, welcome, and we look forward to your lesson.
Cool, thanks for having me. So today my lesson is going to be about planning positions, where it's a position you're given and the object is to figure out a strategic plan to continue. So we're not looking for tactics, but we need to find like an idea of how to improve the position. And sometimes these can be pretty difficult. And Sasha had given me 6 positions for me to do, try to figure out the plan. And then I had mixed success. After that, she gave me this idea or this kind of model or method to approach these positions, which helps kind of narrow some of the ideas or groups down. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. And we're going to go over one of the positions that she gave me initially, which I was miraculously able to solve without this method, but we'll apply the method to it. So let's just first look at the position, then we'll come back to this. If I can switch the windows. So it's white to play here. And just making some general observations about the position, we might note that the king's safety is about pretty safe for both sides. The material is even. We might notice that white has pretty good activity of their pieces. We have these doubled rooks on the c file pressuring the c6 pawn. And we have centralized pieces. Well, both sides kind of have centralized pieces. But white has this problem rook in the corner. It's undefended, it's undeveloped. And they also have this c6 pawn being pinned because the pressure along the c file. So those are just kind of some observations. And let's just kind of take a look at what Sasha recommends for these types of planning positions. So first is, does the opponent have any threats or scary ideas? And typically in these kind of educational positions, you're not going to be given one where you have to first parry a threat and then execute a plan, but you might. And it's always good to be worth like looking at the opponent's ideas and pluses in the position. So if we kind of go back to the position and take a peek over here, like I don't think
black has anything fantastic going on, but they also don't really have any weak squares with this pawn structure being totally fine, even though they played f6, you know. Like they're totally okay. Maybe this d6 square is weak or something, but not really. We can't really do anything about it right now. They don't have any pressure going. You know, they don't seem like they have a lot going on. What they do have is, you know, maybe they're going to just play rook a to c8, and then maybe they'll play c5, or they'll play rook here and do this. And if we give black enough time, I feel like they're just going to sort their pieces out and be totally fine. So that's maybe some observations that we can make about the position. Then Sasha's recommendations here are to look to see, do we have any regroups? Do we have any exchanges? Or do we have any pawn moves? So regroups would be re-coordinating your pieces, finding new homes for them. Do we have an inactive piece that we need to improve? Is there an outpost that we need to go stick a piece on? Things like that, trying to better our position. Are there any exchanges for us to make that are beneficial? So these exchanges, you know, there's lots of reasons to exchange. Maybe you're trading off one of their defenders. Maybe you're trading off your bad bishop for their good bishop. Maybe you're trading off an inactive piece of yours for an active piece of theirs. Maybe these trades open up lines or weaken their king. Lots of reasons to make exchanges, but it's something to look for in these positions. And then also look for pawn moves. So, and again, many reasons for pawn moves. Maybe it's gaining space, maybe it's controlling a square, maybe it's opening a line, because if you can, you know, not in this position, but if perhaps there was, you know, a pawn here, maybe you have to imagine the position looking different, but you could maybe push the pawn up a square, finding a home for your knight. So looking to open lines, or maybe there's a bishop here, you could do this and it would open the bishop along this diagonal. Many reasons, but those are the things to look at. And again, they were regrouping, exchanges, and pawn moves. So now we're going to kind of look at this position with this framework, and it might help us find what is considered the best move, or at least the move played in the model game here. Because sometimes these positions are overwhelming. We have probably, you know, 30 legal moves or something. So we have to figure out what to do. Let's look at regrouping first. So first, these rooks are probably almost ideally placed, doubled on the c-file, pressuring here. The queen is in the center, pretty good. The knight is not really doing much here. I mean, it's okay, but we could consider regrouping it over to f4, pressuring the e6 pawn. But that might just prompt black to fix their problem rook and give it a job, because currently it has no job on a8, but rook to e8 gives it a job at least. So I don't think that this is typically a position for regrouping. I've seen more positions where it's a bit more closed, and maybe you can go maneuver a knight to a weak square is a common regrouping kind of idea in some of these positions. But like I said, black doesn't have any real weak squares for us to exploit. Pawn moves here, we don't have any pawn moves that are gonna activate pieces. We do have like b4, a4, gaining some space. We have f3. These are pawn moves that we could consider. But in response to these, I imagine that black would just fix their rook with rook a to c8 or rook e8 or something, you know, kind of, if we give black time, I think they're gonna be able to sort their pieces out. So then we're kind of left with exchanges as the only other thing in this model to look for. And I guess I wanna say first here, like, when I have a position like this, like without this model, I might think, okay, white's better. White's slightly better. White needs to improve and keep the gas up, like add more fuel to the fire if they want to like use their advantage. So the move that's actually played here was very surprising and not the first thing that crossed my mind, because, well, I guess I'll just spoil it here. Let's say it this way. If we want to do an exchange, what can we exchange here? Like, we can't really trade any of these rooks. We can't really force a knight trade. The only thing we could really offer is a queen trade. And to me, when we're up in a slight position, it's not my first thought to be like, hey, let's trade queens. A, it's not my first thought to trade, period. And B, it's not my first thought to trade queens because we're losing so much of the power on the board, especially like a centralized queen. But this is actually a very forcing move, and I'll look through some of these lines here, and it's the move we're going to play. But we might also notice that if you just imagine the position without the queens on the board, the c6 pawn is just hanging. The queen is probably one of their prime defenders for the black side. It's defending all these things in the center, kind of tying their position together. So if it was gone, we would still have this pressure on the c file. We would still be able to reroute this knight. So looking at the move, and I'll stick it on the board now, it's a very forcing move because the queen can't move along this diagonal because they hang a rook. And queen here just falls into e4. And now like this is hanging, and this type of continuation is no good for black. So, okay, I heard you talking.
Oh no, sorry, you're good.
So queen f4, offering the queen trade. They can't really step the queen out of the way. So their two options are to take the queen or to interpose this pawn. And if black is going to take the queen and go with this trade, knight takes immediately hits e6 and c6. This weakness that we identified originally is now, it's like accentuated with the queens off the board, which is kind of surprising to me. But so I guess for time's sake here, we'll just look at the one kind of obvious move of what black playing e5, because it protects this pawn and hits this knight. But then now we have knight, which is really nice. We have knight d5 as an option here, using the pin that was mentioned earlier in the position as well as something. And then in that position, black would not have rooks c to c8 because of check, winning the exchange. So some of the tactical kind of elements and problems with the position are showing up in these lines. Also, knight to e6 is totally good position because at the end of the day, this c pawn is just going to fall, and white's going to be having a bunch of initiative, even if black ends up playing e takes d. So I think this line is good. I mean, just putting it on the board, something like this looks very, very good for white. So I am happy with this continuation here of push, oops, excuse me, here. On queen takes, I think it's almost refuted by knight takes. So the other move that we need to consider is if we offer the queen take trade and they push the pawn to e5. And we're going to take this pawn, forcing them to recapture. If, let's say they recapture with the pawn, then I think queen to e5, queen to e4, or queen to c4 are strong moves. e4, we're now attacking the c pawn yet again. c5 is not possible because, again, this loose rook in the position is here. They would probably play rook to c8, tying it all together. But black is very tied down in this position. We have 3 things attacking c6. They have 3 defending. We have 2 things attacking e5. They have 2 defending. So any piece movement is going to like result in a lost pawn. And also, this is now an isolated pawn. So if we end up trading down a lot, this may become a liability for black in the endgame. So this continuation, I think, is fine for white as well. And even in this position, I don't know if this move is better than which move is better. I think that this is a good. My evaluation is that this is fine or good for white. That's this position. So if after we take and say they take with the knight, if we just take down again, they clearly can't queen take because this trade drops the c pawn. And we're up a healthy pawn. We have power on the c file. This is an isolated pawn. We're up a pawn. This is probably just completely winning. So that line is no good. Another line, and this actually does come from a game, which I think I can maybe show you, but I'm not going to bother. After we take here, I think in the game played was takes. And I don't remember if in the game, but again, e4 and c4 are fine squares for the queen. with the same idea that, if I go here, you can't push because of takes. So something like this. And then, queen c4 is also a strong move, because one of the ideas in this position is, let's say we played queen c4. If king f8, then we could lift the rook to c3 and activate it along this way. We're still making progress in the position here. If the king goes to the corner, then I think their king is just in the corner. They have an isolated pawn. We have better activity. If they play rook f7, I don't know. We can still just like improve our things. So I think that this is a good continuation, and it was what was played in the game and was the correct answer, which I thought was surprising to me to trade queens in such a position. But if we use kind of the planning positions ideas here, it's easier to find this move, knowing that exchanges is one of the things we're looking for. So again, like just to reiterate over the model here is, if you're given these kind of positional exercises, and I went on a stream a long time ago, or a few months ago, it was like me and Seth Nordovich and DM Hoki, and we did some of these chess.com exercises by Stillman on like these positional exercises, and those are great ways to practice this. And we could, if we had this, we would probably be able to find some of these moves a lot faster. So again, the idea is first look at what your opponent has to do. Like, what are their threats? Do they have any good ideas? What are their pluses? Then the three kind of main categories to look at are looking for regroupings of your pieces, looking to make exchanges, or looking to make certain pawn moves. And then, you justify and choose a final solution. And in this position, I chose the queen f4 move. And yeah, that is my lecture for today.
Thank you. Wonderful. I'm realizing for the audience, it must be kind of a lot to get so many lessons in one day, because it's a little bit rapid fire. Like I don't know how many people's brains are set up to receive, 6 or 7, lessons in a single day, but we're just going to keep them coming. So thank you very much, Eric. It was an excellent lesson.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll go back to our graphic here for a moment while we bring in the next teacher / student. Today a teacher, tomorrow a student. All right. The chat says keep them coming, so we will keep them coming. We'll be bringing in Dripman in a second. As you can see on your screen right now, the individual winner of the Endgame Challenge. For anyone who's coming to us late, I will put back up the format for the student showcase while Dripman's taking over my screen share and getting set up here. So you guys can see we are still in the 10-minute lessons. You've seen 4 lessons. If you're keeping count, there's another 2 or 3 to go. And I see a good screen share. And Dripman, should we
My audio okay?
Should we just jump into it? I hear you well.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Here we go. The viewer showcase continues. Oh, as always, I'm gonna have to change the name correctly, but you can take it away, Dripman. You need no further introduction than that you just won the Endgame Challenge, so go for it.
Appreciate it. So my lesson today is going to be about 2 things. 1, playing with confidence and feeling when you're entitled to a tactic. And 2, once you start that tactical attack, staying principled and not rushing into it. I think I'm good at the first of these things, but the second of these things I've had trouble with. And I actually played a game recently, training game, that Kostya and I analyzed afterwards, where this weakness I have kind of came into play. So it's been something I've been trying to work on. So here I have a game, Geller versus Portish, and I'm just going to kind of run through the opening. The first move that's a little bit notable is queen d7. So I didn't analyze this with an engine at all. I didn't look at any sort of notes from someone else, but I checked the opening book, and this is an uncommon move nowadays. And I think this game really shows why, because what's currently played is knight a5, really just trying to get this bishop off of this diagonal as quickly as possible. So kind of keep that in mind as a theme going forward. And the second Portish plays this queen d7 inaccuracy, Geller really jumps on this, opening up the center, d takes e5, and after takes back, we see knight h5 kind of already starting an attack. Now, black responds with queen e7. I think the most natural thing for a lot of people would say, hey, like they're trying to attack, let's trade queens. And after something like knight takes f6, g takes f6, white actually has a very nice move here, which is bishop d1. I think the natural thing to do would be to recapture with the rook. But the problem is black wants to play knight e7, which would reveal an attack on this pawn. But by keeping the rook here, we have this defended, and we're fast enough now to play knight h4. And here, I think at a lot of the level that like I'm at and a lot of the viewers are at, you know, white has something here. White has successfully fought for the f5 square, but I think at the GM level, this is kind of just unacceptable to allow. Black's pieces can never essentially move from protecting this square. Let's just make a ridiculous move like this, because if you ever allow this knight to get to f5, you have kind of unstoppable pressure on this pawn, because if you go to defend it, this bishop comes in and you're going to lose f7. So that's why you can't just kind of do this like quick queen swap. So instead, going back to the game after knight h4, we have what I'm going to call a mistake, which is knight takes h5, kind of giving white what they want and bringing the queen in. Again, my guess is like you can still defend this position somehow. I didn't spend a ton of time trying to do it because I think the bigger critical moment is later. But to me, there's just no reason to allow this queen to come in. And especially this next move, knight a5. And so even if let's say you're in this position and you feel like there's not necessarily a tactic, it doesn't seem like right away, because black's pretty consolidated, but in my mind, black has kind of committed some sins. They took knight h5, bringing the queen in, and then they hopped their knight to the edge of the board. But if white were to just play a natural move, let's say bishop c2 retreating, this isn't quite enough, because after just, again, some normal moves here, white's better, but they don't really have anything immediate. So I want people to feel this moment where knight a5 comes and white should say, hey, if I play bishop c2, I'm a little bit better. But I feel like I want to play confident and I'm entitled to more, and like spend time here and open up your mind to more positions. Because I think where a lot of us are at in this Ultimate Sensei about this 1600 level, when people talk about, oh, I can't feel tactics in a position, a lot of times it needs to be beyond like, hey, like there are loose pieces that are undefended. There's maybe a fork. And we want to get into maybe another level of thinking of like, hey, positionally, I deserve more. And I'm not saying I would ever find this move in a game, but Geller finds this amazing move, bishop g5. Taking advantage of this pressure on f7 while it's still there. And the only thing you need to be able to calculate to play this move is that if you have knight g6, on one hand attacking this queen, but also you have this unstoppable mate threat. Oops. And so this double threat, if you see this, is enough to play bishop g5. But again, I'm not even saying that I would see this, but what I want people to take away is that mentally, in this position, you should be willing to calculate. So bishop g5, queen retreats over, and this is actually my favorite move of the game, rook ad1. And this is what I need to work on, and that I've talked with Kostya about, because if I'm in this position, I'm like, okay, I got all these pieces pointing. What are my candidate moves? Sack here, knight f5. But the problem is this bishop here is providing very good defense. And this simple principle of bringing in all your pieces into the attack leaves black with absolutely no choices, because there are two options. Retreat the queen to a safe square, which completely undefends f7, or block the queen with the bishop, keeping defensive f7, which is what was played in the game. But now you've undefended this extremely critical diagonal. So in the midst of all of this hanging bishop g5, in the midst of this quasi-hanging bishop on b3, in the sense that once you lose it, this bishop, your attack is pretty much done for, Geller finds, to me, this amazing move, rook ad1, staying principled in the attack, deflecting this bishop from defense, and now he is able to finish the position very nicely. Bishop takes h6, takes, check, exploiting the pin, king f8. And now in this position, another nice quiet move, because again, now this taking is a threat, and also this king wants to escape. So simply sliding this queen over, boxes the king in, making it impossible for the king to run. And it also comes with this threat of checkmate. So black's essentially in extremely big trouble here and is completely dead. And after king g8, again, bringing more pieces into the attack with a quiet move, rook e3, with the idea of, hey, I'm just going to slide over and I'm going to win this game. And this is, I mean, black can like give away their pieces to try to stop it, but it's just going to be completely losing if not forced mate. So this is what the two moments of this game that are very important to me are after knight a5 saying, I am better here and I will not accept playing bishop c2 and going passive and only being slightly better and spending time to find some other move in the position. And then once you find a move like this, being able to follow it up precisely with rook ad1, not forgetting your principles. Because when I get into these situations, I immediately just try to start calculating all the things. I'm calculating this sack, I'm calculating this sack, I'm calculating knight f5, and I'm forgetting about this rook on a1. And just bringing this rook over, even if maybe black had, let's say this is a different position, black has some other sort of defense to either, still cover this, still move the queen. To me, what's important to recognize is I'm not actually giving up any time. I'm not wasting any critical tempi here in my attack because black is really forced to respond to this. So this to me has like a very instructive game of kind of interesting in the sense that I think it helped along some Roy Lopez theory and showing why this knight a5 needs to come very early in order to kick this bishop off the diagonal, but also these other attributes about how you need to combine critical moments, fast attack, but then a slow build sometimes after that. Because I like I said, I had a practice game recently where I went too fast for the attack where my opponent couldn't move any pieces and I could have just tucked my king safely, slowly built, and then done my whole plan. So I hope you all enjoyed this and got something out of it, and looking forward to the matches after this. So have a good day, guys. Thanks.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Dripman. Fantastic example. One of the things that's stood out to me so far in these lessons that we're watching, everybody, is that we are getting really, really well-chosen example positions. Have you guys noticed that? Like one of the things is these positions are like have like a little bit of like a surprise or a memorableness, but then also are very much like instructive and illustrative. It's not just like some fancy crazy thing that you don't think applies to you or that you've never like seen before or anything. Like where you can't process it once you see it. Once you see it, you're like, oh yeah, like wow, like like with Rangel, that queen on d6, man, it was like a better piece than I realized. When white trades it off, black's position gets so much worse. So I think the fact that they're choosing these examples that are striking is going to increase everybody's chances at retention. That's been like a strength throughout the day here. So back to my graphic about the format. You guys can get ready in about 20 minutes or so. We'll be into our matches. I will be joined in a moment here by Ty. Ty, are you going to take over the screen share here, or do you have a different format?
I'll have a screen share.
You have a screen share. Okay, cool. My situation should be all set up as soon as you take over that. So, yeah. So, as you guys can see, the matches coming up will be 15 plus 5 minutes. Each of the students will be paired against one other student who's not on their team, and they will play a 2-game match against them, white and black, against the same opponent. Very, very similar to the format they'll be seeing in 2 weeks in the finale. And yeah, there will be a couple points to be gained in those matches for anyone keeping track of the standings, because so far the lessons are pretty good and pretty tight. So, are you ready, Ty? Shall I bring you in? He's ready. Here he comes. Everybody, please welcome the fellow known as Chess Numbers, or Jimbo Job Joe John Jimbo Joe.
Hi, everyone. I am Ty Bruce Zimmerman, aka Chess Numbers, aka Bob Joe Jim on chess.com. And today I'm going to talk about calculation, and specifically not how to calculate. Seth already gave us, I think, a really good demonstration of that, but rather why calculation is so important, even in spots where we might be tempted to think it's not necessary. So what happens to me, this is a weakness that I have, and I have a strong suspicion a lot of other players at my level share this weakness, is that I like to play on intuition. I'm a pretty good calculator. We saw that, hopefully, if you watched me win the tactics challenge, but I often just don't do it if a move seems conceptually unplayable. Or so it might be a move of my own, a resource I have that I dismiss, or it might be a resource for our opponent that we miss. But playing on intuition obviously gets us into a lot of trouble. So what I'm going to be showing here is a position that Matt showed me originally just as a positional instruction, because I'm also relatively weak at positional play, and that's something that we've been working a lot on. But he has also consistently throughout all our lessons done a really good job calling me out on those moments where I say a move looks good instead of giving a line. So we're going to look at this position where the positional concept it was supposed to teach me was something I basically lost track of because I discounted some moves. And this is a Capablanca game from Hastings, 1919. The opening isn't really the point, but they played just this double Lopez 4 knights game. Winter had white, Capablanca was black. Winter makes this trade, plays d3. Capablanca kicks the bishop, and this is our key position. Now, because this isn't a lesson on positional play, I will just spoil the point of the position, which is that white would love to play the d4 pawn break here. So the idea black needs to be looking at is c5 to stop d4. But what my intuition told me was that that must be unplayable because it creates this hole for knight d5. And then you have the threat of knight takes f6 with the pin, and if g takes back, the king side is just getting too heavily weakened. So the danger is if you see an idea like that and dismiss c5 because of it, you'll miss out on what turns out to be the move Capablanca played, what turns out to be the best move. There is a follow-up where my intuition gets even more aggressive about that, because if you do force yourself to try to calculate, okay, what if I did play c5 and white plays knight d5? What do I have? Is it so bad? There's really only two ways to parry the threat on f6 without having to take back with the g-pawn and just being in an awful position. One of them would be bishop e7, but that just proves to be way too passive. That one's a pretty easy one to evaluate, that it's not what we're going for. If that's our best move, c5 is something we have to reject. The other option is g5. That breaks the pin. But here, my intuition when Matt showed this to me was that can't possibly work. And without calculating, I just said, no, you can't play that, because I'm a tactical player and I'm immediately seeing knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and thinking, this must be good for white. And that is the danger. The ultimate point here is that we have to avoid those that must be right situations and actually calculate. Now, because this is only a 10-minute lecture, I'm not going to force people to calculate this position out. I'm going to put the key lines on the board and just go through what you would see if you had the time to calculate. And then I'll go through how you could have seen that from the original position if you put the work in. And if you shoot down that voice in your intuition telling you to not consider this at all. So Capablanca did play c5, and Winter had the same intuition that I did, that probably some of you had looking at this as well, and went for the knight d5 line. And we already looked at, without putting it on the board, we looked at, for example, this, and it's just not enough. White would be happy here. So instead, Capablanca plays the move I thought he couldn't play, g5. And it is true, in this position, my intuition was telling me this is a disaster, and it is. This is one of those places the danger comes in, where a couple ply down the road from the starting position, and it's easy to think that h takes g5 was forced, and this would be horrible. Now the situation on f6 is even worse than it was before. This is also not a lesson on attacking, so I'm not going to spend too much time on exactly how white converts this, but this position is great for white. Black can try something like bishop e7 to try to hold together, but after the trade and queen f3, now the king has to come up, and white has this queen g3 move. This is absolutely good for white. This is, again, if this was inevitable, we wouldn't have played c5 originally. But here is the trick. H takes g5 wasn't forced. If when we play g5, if white thinks they have all of that and takes, there's a move that with this on the screen, you might see that you might not have seen on c5. So this is actually a spot where if you do force yourself to toss intuition aside and do the calculation, this is a spot where the steps method would help the calculation tremendously. If you're able to pause in this moment, recognize that h takes g5 isn't forced, and then you might find this key intermezzo, knight takes d5, and bingo. Now, still room to calculate a little more, because white does have a potential discovery on the queen, but the knight can't check, so there's not a great way to make use of it, since the knight's also pinned to an undefended bishop. So they could try retreating, defending the bishop, but then you just retreat, black has won a piece, and that's enough to make up for the weaknesses on the king side. Or if they tried some more aggressive desperado like this, you can grab the bishop, they take the rook, and you can just save your knight. That knight's never getting out. You're going to be up a piece again. So if you calculate this position carefully and you spot this knight takes d5 intermezzo, you are able to come to the conclusion that g5 is playable. Then you have to look at what will white play instead of knight takes, and you might find the game continuation. Once you're hitting this bishop, if they just retreat, you get the real point of this exercise positionally, which is that bishop is, while still technically on the board, basically lost because it's locked in a prison by those pawns. This is the positional point that this game is more famous for. This is what Matt was trying to teach me. It is relevant and important, and I will show you how the game ends very quickly in a moment. But for me, I got stuck on that knight takes g5, thinking this was impossible, missing the key because I didn't take the time to calculate the position enough. And without calculating, I would have never thought c5 was playable in the original position. So the forced move here is knight takes or not forced, but the game continuation is knight takes f6, and Kappa takes back with the queen. Bishop runs away and is entombed forever. Capablanca decides to trade into essentially a piece-up endgame and goes on to convert this very smoothly. f6 locks in the position. This is why it's a classic game. This is outside the scope, though, of my point. I just really want to emphasize this situation that I run into so often in my own games where I think a move looks bad, so I don't look at it further. And it's so important that we calculate. So I'm good at calculation because of on the tactical side, I know to calculate my tactical lines, but what I've been really learning more about as I work on positional play with Matt is how important calculation is to strategic play as well. We saw this a little bit in Eric's lesson also. He was showing us a strategic position, but he had to calculate a bunch of lines, and we worked through to see why that queen trade that he proposed made sense. So calculation isn't just for tactics, it's for strategy too, and we always have to check our intuition. Real quick, the game was just pretty straightforward. None of this is the point, but you can see Winter was never able to free the bishop and eventually gave up, playing basically down a piece. So back to our original position. If we spot that calculation, and it's not the hardest calculation ever, it's a couple moves deep with a few key lines. But if you really, I know that I'm able to calculate a line like c5, knight d5, g5, knight takes g5, knight takes d5. That's 5 moves. That's a calculation I'm capable of. But I might not do it if I'm not forcing myself to calculate when it's necessary. So it's just a really important takeaway here. If you spot the c5 idea in the first place and are looking at this positional idea of stopping d4, don't reject it because a move looks wrong. Find out if a move is actually wrong. And if the calculation piece is hard for you, the calculation that allows you to play positionally, then you work on calculation too. And we all need to always work on calculation, both for our strategic play and for our tactical play. But I hope this position, where it's not super complicated if you take the time to do it, but it's, for me, incredibly non-intuitive, and I suspect for a lot of other people out there too, I hope this really drives home why calculation is so important, perhaps even more so than we already give it credit for.
All right. Thank you, Ty. And so, yeah, we, I think it's really fascinating that this lesson that Ty has about, when to calculate and the importance and value of calculation comes out of an attempted strategic lesson that he was getting. It's very, very cool what he got out of that. I'm not certain whether or not we're going to have one more lesson. Some people in chat were talking about something, and so it was referenced, and I should address it. I realized if I'd had a couple more minutes in my intro to today's show. But yeah, we've had a couple replacements, and so We have 2 students who have withdrawn since the endgame challenge. Lula and Katrina were replaced by Dai and Chess Maestro. And so, and Maestro was only brought in yesterday, so very, very last minute to prepare something. But it looks like Dai has prepared a lesson for us in this last week and was eager to participate. So I'm going to bring Dai in now, and it'll be a chance for everyone to meet our newest competitor. And to all the participants who are listening or watching right now, after Dai's lesson, I'll want you all to rejoin the Zoom call all at once, and we'll take 5 minutes to get set and hopefully have the matches started by 2 p.m. Yeah, let me take this chance to bring Dai in here and say hi. So, greetings, Dai. How are you doing? No sound just yet on your mic side, so we'll...
Oh, I was muted.
There we go.
Okay. Everything else working fine? I'm kind of muted. So.
Everything's working
the
fine.
Board's good? Okay.
I've seen you on stream, so I figured you'd know what you were doing with the mic and all that.
I am terrible at this stuff. I am so bad. I was like, man, I don't know if I should do this. They're going to yell at me for not having the audio already. I'm like, oh gosh. I'm so not techie, so you have to forgive me.
Okay. Well, all fans of Bobby Fischer will forgive you.
Yes.
You've got a great setup there.
Thank you. Yes, he is a legend. So I am new. So I was watching the other guys give lessons. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. What did I get into?
I don't have that right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've had, at least 7 weeks of intense training with, top coaches at this point.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ways that people learn how to teach is often by being taught by somebody who's a good teacher. So yeah, I'm sure that they wouldn't have taught that well without this experience.
Yeah, their speech and the way they're describing, I'm just like, if Knight goes there, you take it.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna give it my best shot though, and kind of explain, what I learned with my lesson with Sasha.
Excellent. And how many lessons have you had with Sasha at this point?
One.
Since
so you just got in. I was joining Chess Dojo was a week ago.
Yeah.
I found out.
Right.
So, and she's busy, so she's like, do this. I was like, okay, I'm there. I dropped
all right,
everything.
We'll give you a bonus point for lack of preparation. Everyone's already aware that my grading is just going to be random. So,
yikes.
Maybe Seth will withdraw because he'll be like, I expect teacher evaluations to be done properly.
Oh my goodness. No, she did a great job. I mean, I need some, now that I've seen how the way you guys do it, I should be more prepared next time for sure.
No worries.
The theme seems to be calculation from what I'm hearing. And we definitely went through that because I just started playing chess. So I've always heard of these calculation exercises. I've never done one. I didn't really even knew what people were talking about, like the difference between a puzzle or, the various types of exercises you can do. So I really didn't know what the difference was until I did it. I've even done blind tactics exercises, but dang, this stuff is hard. Holy crap, man. Yeah. So it really taught me one, I mean, like the psychological part of chess where you just think you've calculated all the way through, you just, at least I know that's my problem. I'll go through a line and I'm like, okay, yeah, it doesn't work. But then I didn't really look at all the options. Does that make sense? Like it just really brought that more to light, and that really helps my game because I just stop and discipline myself to look further. Whereas I didn't do that before. I didn't know you do such things. Yeah, and how hard it is too. So I really don't know how to explain everything that I've learned because it's not. Like I said, I was watching other guys. It's she there's some key points. I don't know if it's easier if I just kind of show you. She told me through calculation first, you need candidate moves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we spent a lot of time on that because I'm not used to that. I've never done a such thing. I mean, I guess you do it naturally, but to properly do it with like steps and choosing, because I would look for the most obvious first one, and then I would just run with it forever.
Right.
You know?
Do you have a position that you want us to like pull up and look at, or would you like me to provide you a position?
I'm sure. I mean, for me to work with, I was just gonna explain the one that I.
You have one.
I
Okay.
did.
Cool.
Can you see it on the board?
I right now you're not screen sharing with me, so I can't see it.
Oh shoot.
So you could screen share with me, or if you've got a boardandchess.com, I could come watch you.
I have it on analysis. Can you watch it like that?
Rob.
I thought I pressed the green button, share screen. What do you mean? Wait, Alt S.
Maybe just press the share screen button again, or hit OK or something.
Did that work?
No, I don't.
Oh, I got it. I have to, dude. I'm so terrible. I have to.
Oh, you have to pick what you want to share. It's going to ask you like which window on your computer.
My goodness.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna share. It's.
Now we've got a screen share. I see your board.
Is it proportioned and everything?
I mean, I'm gonna quickly work it out for them, but I can see it, so you're good.
Okay, let me just make sure it's yeah, okay. So let me know when you're good.
Yeah. All right. Everyone can see it properly now.
Okay, cool. Thank you, David.
Absolutely.
So the first thing I learned is that you kind of want to go when you're picking the candidate moves. You know, I guess each position might have more than others, some less, but you pick them, and it's best to go with the most obvious ones first, the easiest ones to calculate. That way, if they're wrong, you can just move on quickly. But also, I guess another important thing is kind of pick the three, but skim through them quickly. Like, don't go too far with it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean. That's what I've been working on this past year myself.
Yeah, she'll tell me, anybody can tell me that. I'm in La La Land. I'll just go in forever. But it's important to like, yeah, pick the three that makes the most sense. And then from there, try the easiest one to figure out. And that way you can exempt it quickly if it's not a good move. And so it took me a long time to even get used to that. Like you said, you're working on that, and she kept telling me, "Will you stop doing that?" Or "What is your?" I was like, "I don't know." So it's really important to kind of have it, like your mind, I guess, focused and organized that way. At least for me, because that's my weakness. I just end up all over the place. And so yeah, this position. We kind of went over, you want to look for checks, captures, and threats. Checks first. And then if there's no checks, then you look for potentially a capture. And then if not, a really strong threat. So here we just start with, rook check. Seems to be the only one you can do. So the first thing I did was rook check. And it's important to note that every move that you select for them needs to be the most forceful one. So first you're looking at two ways that can capture you. So you just figure go through the f7 pawn first. I suppose you can just pick one. I just picked one that made the most sense because this one opens up the line for the queen. So if rook captures, and if f7 captures, queen check, and then king f8, bishop e7 check, king g8, queen e8 check, king. And again, this is all. I guess I'm not explaining each move because it's like forced. I don't know if, I assume You guys know that. But yeah, so then king h7. And here's where it was getting really tough. This was getting really tough for me because I could not, you run into this problem where you check with the bishop and then it just captures. And so it took me like 20, 30 minutes. She just would not give me a hint. I was like, come on. So anyhow, this is a the reason why it's hard is because you actually oh my gosh, I forgot the line. No, I didn't. Queen's here. Okay, shoot, I'm gonna have to run through it again. See, it's hard, guys. Captures.
Yeah.
Check. Okay. Oof. And then queen check. No, you don't. Because then it gets captured by the queen. Ooh. Dang. I totally. Okay. Oh, I got it.
Sasha makes you work hard.
She did. She was not letting me let up. I was like, are you sure this is fair? I've never done this before. But it really, man, I was so tired after the lesson. It just really, but I appreciate that. It really made me work hard for the answer. And I mean, I had it prepared. I guess I'm just kind of maybe nervous.
Okay.
I guess. Oh, she's going to hate me for not knowing.
Wow, she's really intense. You're afraid she's gonna hate you?
No, but this is I should know it. My goodness, David, I bet you already know it too. You're just looking at it.
I have figured it out, but it took me a long time. Yeah. Do you want me to help you through it a little bit? It gets to your thing about candidate moves. You actually need to find an unusual candidate move after bishop e7 check king to g8. Like queen e8, queen h5 is kind of like the obvious approach, but there's a black queen on c5 covering h5. You've got good visualization to see that. So you need to stop in the position after bishop e7, king g8, and look for other candidate moves for white in that position.
Right, because it doesn't work.
Other than queen e8, king h7. And something that I'll do a lot is I'll just keep going. Queen e8, king h7, queen e8, king h7, even though it doesn't work. And I won't like get it through my head like this thing doesn't work. Add a new idea. Don't just keep...
Yeah, you have no idea. She's going to yell at me because we literally went... She's going to be like, Die. She was trying to teach me to stop, like you said. And I just did it again.
Uh-huh.
Literally the same exact move. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, chess is hard. I gotta say. Yeah. So so you said there's a bishop pin, right?
Yeah. So I said after you go bishop e7 check king to g8, you could look for other moves. I didn't say it would be a bishop pin, but
yeah.
But there is.
What?
But it is a bishop move.
Yeah. Oh, it's it's a bishop check, I think. Yes. Okay, let me start that over.
I think Sasha in chat said that you can move pieces if you want.
Oh. Okay.
I think you've been given permission.
Man, that does help. Okay, actually, I believe if you do bishop check, maybe it's not bishop check actually. Is it?
Nope.
Nope. It's not.
But that's a good extra candidate move to look at bishop h5 check before the queen check. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now let's go in here. Yep. Here, and now look for a new candidate move here other than queen e8.
Yeah. Totally. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Oh. Yeah. Bishop f6.
Yeah. Fantastic move.
That is a hard move to find.
Very hard to look for. It's like three
Yeah.
moves ahead, and you're like down 2 rooks, and then you have to play a move that's not check.
That is a hard one to find, especially since you moved the bishop there in the first place. To go backwards, it's.
Yep.
I always have a hard time, especially if you move your knight out, and then certain situation you got to move it right back home. That's so tough. That's not the same situation, but in some ways, I don't know. It just slips my mind. Yeah, that's. So that's kind of ingrained in my head how hard it is, and here's a prime example of how I don't remember. And also the fact that when you sacrifice your rook, you have to really know all that before you do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't just check. That's the stress, the importance of calculating. I don't know how else to say it. It's
You need
for
a
a beginner.
weird mix in this problem of both like persistent stubbornness but also flexibility of thought. Like you need to be persistent enough to keep looking for a way to make it work after queen e8 check doesn't work, but flexible enough to stop looking at queen e8 and try and find a different idea.
No, that's what she said that. Yeah, and it's gonna take me some time to apply it in the game, and then I'm gonna hear her voice be like, stop calculating that move, it doesn't work. Eventually, but she really stressed that. So yeah, that was the first one she gave me, and wow. I was toasted.
Well, I can tell you she expects a lot out of you if she's giving you a puzzle like this,
Yeah, but she knows I love the challenge, and I wouldn't want it any other way. So yeah, it's been really great with her.
Awesome.
So, and also I gotta thank you for the opportunity to be on here.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I got prepared.
Cool. That's great. Everybody's probably ready to play as well.
All right. So how does
Oh, sorry. She's going to hate me too. I'm scared. It's all caps. This was not a puzzle. It was a calculation task. I correct myself before I get in trouble. It was a calculation task because you have to work through several moves. You have to go ahead. You have to be flexible. There's like a lot of work to it. It's not just knowing one pattern or anything like that. So thank you so much, Dai. I mean, we're really happy to have you here too. Thank you so much for joining us on this Ultimate Sensei season. And I think you're going to get a lot out of Sasha in just 3 weeks of time. So I'm glad that you have this opportunity. And
awesome. Thanks for having me.
And I know we talked about potentially you playing a match today also right away. But your opponent for today's match, Chess Maestro, who just joined the show yesterday evening, it turns out he's not ready to play today. Okay. His schedule wasn't actually set just yet, and it's 1 a.m. in his country right now. So he wasn't able to switch around his sleep schedule on one day's notice. So I
won't be playing?
So you won't be playing right now when the other 6 do, but he'd be happy to play you exactly this 2-game match that you would have had some other day this week. And I'll try to arrange that for the 2 of you offline in the next week. As long as your coach, approves that it's, just as good training for you as it is for the opponent that you're also giving training to by playing them. So...
Yeah. Well, I'm all about it. So if, sure.
Cool. Well, I'm going to invite all the other players to rejoin Zoom. I'm going to go to our graphics for a second while I shuffle around cameras and get set for the next part of our show, which will be matches. So anybody listening, you can come back into the Zoom. Let's all get together here. We'll admit everybody to Zoom. Bum, 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 bum.
I suppose I'll let y'all be then. These are for the
matches? Yeah, you can jump out since you won't be playing. Why don't you watch so you can scout your opposition?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, watch them play. Maybe
as a viewer.
Yeah, maybe I'll be able to see a weaknesses of theirs and let you in on it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Showcase a few weaknesses. I have that capacity.
All right, so we got everybody in here for the matches.
Good job, guys.
Greetings and welcome back. Happy to have you all. Let's see. Oh yeah, I've still got. And all right, we are on. The matches are starting, everybody. It's true. I only hear what you guys say if you all caps it. So, we are good to go. We've got a match going here. We've got a match going here. We're going to, let's see, who else do I need to follow here? I've got Bob Joe Jim. I'll follow Ringo. Okay. And there's Rangao and Nargave. So all the games are off. So folks, we'll probably have about an hour here to watch this match. These 3 matches at once. They're going to be 2-game matches. And you can start thinking of this, everybody watching, in terms of what this would feel like when we're in the finals of Ultimate Sensei 2 weeks from now. Because I am fairly certain that all the players are thinking about it in that way right now. They're playing against somebody who they're likely to play a 2-game match against at some point January 22nd or 23rd, right? So they need to think in terms of like match strategy, especially like when they get into the second game, right? If someone's down a game, they're going to have to think like, I have to win this. If they're up a game, they're going to be thinking like, oh, maybe a draw is okay. Or even during that second game, if it's looking like the match might end tied 1-1, they have to think like, do I have better chances to try and go for something extra in this game? Or is it fine for me to go to that tiebreak? So, yeah. That said, let's see what openings we've got. We've got the Spanish from Falk against Bob Joe Jim. Super classical kind of position. Black's playing some version of like a bishop c5 defense. This might be this Neo Archangelsk that was our opening of the week. Here. Yeah, this might be a former opening of the week of ours. Then Dritman and Seth. Seth's still sporting the Sveshnikov. That's been a very consistent mainstay of his repertoire for a year and a half. Rangau and Nargaev with A4. I'm going to say this is an anti-martial move order. So let's just get right here. So what that means is Rangau here does not want to go into an opening called the martial attack, which goes like this. Black sacrifices a pawn, but leaves this pawn on c3, kind of like cramping in white's queenside pieces, and then you switch to bishop d6, queen h4, and you whip up an attack out of nowhere, very active pieces for black. And even if you just remain down a pawn, black remains active, and a lot of top players have played this opening over the years, and sort of the current consensus is it's a very high-level opening for black to play. And for anybody who watched the World Championship match recently between Carlsen and Nepomniachtchi, you'll know that this is like that, Nepo chose to avoid the martial attack and was playing anti-martial. So that's kind of like a current hot topic. So we get A4, bishop B7, D3, knight D2. And some people may know I mostly play the King's Gambit in tournaments in my life, but I've faced this opening once or twice, and I also played A4. Kasparov also played A4 at some point. So yeah. So there we go. It's going to start with some maneuvering. Black has avoided a quick C3, D4 from white by threatening that martial, and white wanting to avoid it. And that is all three of our openings. So we've got 2 Ruiz and a Sveshnikov, and 3 games with 1 E4. So at the moment, looking like an E4 heavy meta here in season 2. How did you all enjoy the lessons? It was a lot. It was a lot to take in quickly, right? I hope that there were people here who profited from those lessons. I thought they did overall a very, very good job. I think all but one of those lessons will be scoring more than 3 points out of 5. So I think there were a lot of good points, and I especially loved the lessons that included sort of like, thought process or mentality kind of ideas, like not just like, here's a trick for calculating, or here's a trick for like, or here's like one cool positional idea, but stuff where it's like, here's how to think about it. Here's how to take your knowledge and use it in a game, or here's like when to calculate it. Here's why it matters to have confidence. I thought that in general, they did a great job of like explaining why the lessons they did were going to matter. Like their lessons were well chosen, but they were also able to like explain and justify that. So oh yeah, discussion of whether or not some of the players playing black would play d4 as white. So, and Falk here, who's playing e4, was a lifelong d4 player until I told him to try e4 for a couple weeks. And, well, he found it was fertile ground to investigate for like 8 months at this point, I think. But I think he was in class with Nordovic when he made that switch. I'm sure he's still capable of playing d4, but currently plays it rarely. But I would see no reason why he couldn't switch to d4. Especially if he and his coach do any particular prep for a specific opponent in Ultimate Sensei 2. And you'll note that like a lot of players at an amateur level are much better with either e4 or d4. So, and then if you're better with e4, usually you're better at defending against e4 as well, and less good at defending against d4. So if you find someone who's like completely a 1e4 player, sometimes it can be profitable to play 1d4 against them if you're a switch hitter. Or if you're playing against somebody who always plays d4, sometimes it can be good to play 1e4 against them. Again, if you're able to do switch hitting. I'm just going to adjust my glare here. All right, and let's check out how some of the other openings are going so far. Well, or quickly say what's going on here. H6, H3. So this is the one where white did play C3, D4. And it's a big question whether these bishops are going to successfully apply pressure to white's center or if they're going to get sort of locked out of the game. That's really like the huge question for these pieces. That's kind of the big strategic question. So far, Bob Joe Jim looking pretty comfortable on the clock with this. And then I guess there was the question of who might play d4 in their white games. Seth here with black, definitely a candidate to play 1d4. I think chess numbers might be more of an e4 player, and I think Nargaf plays both d4 and e4. But I think he more often plays d4 with white, even though if you look at his style is very well suited for 1e4, and he does clearly try to emulate Morphifan, which is his other online nom de plume or nom d'échec. Excellent. Congratulations, Nordovik. Congratulations on hitting 1,500. Oh, and greetings, Raiders. Welcome to our show. We are so happy to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome to some exhibition matches from Ultimate Sensei. We are getting close to the Ultimate Sensei season finale, which is going to be a 2-day tournament 2 weeks from today, Saturday and Sunday, January 22nd and 23rd. All the participants here on the screen can't hear me at the moment. They are currently playing exhibition matches against others, which are an exact preview almost of the format that we will see in the finals. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Ultimate Sensei is my favorite show that we do here on Chess Dojo. We do a lot of different things. There's a lot of variety, a lot of interest on Chess Dojo. But Ultimate Sensei is kind of my favorite thing. And basically what it does is it takes 4 coaches, it gives them a couple students, and then it gives them a period of time to train up those students. And then those students play a tournament against each other. And based on the results of that tournament, we try to conclude which coaches' training methods were the best during that time. And hopefully you guys aren't on followers only mode. We're happy to have you come in and ask questions about this. You know, some of you may have no idea what's going on. Ask away. I'm happy to try and answer them for you. So we're currently 2 weeks away from the finale. Like I said, the whole season started with a draft where the coaches got to watch the players and pick which players they wanted on their team, including players who didn't get picked. So it was a chance for them to pick, you know, maybe who they think is best, or maybe who they think is most coachable, or maybe who they think works best with them, etc. And all the lessons are streamed online. So the idea is that over the course of the season, you get to watch the coaches training the students, and you can like guess in your head as you're watching these lessons, which players do you think are going to come out on top? Which coaching methods do you think are best? And then when you get that final tournament, it kind of tells you if you were right or wrong in your guesses along the way. You know, you may think like one coach's training was completely not working and it wasn't going to get through to the student, and then suddenly at the last tournament, it all clicks and that student comes crashing through and wins individually, and then it would illuminate your understanding of those coaching techniques that you just seen. So, if you guys have any questions, ask away. I'll be happy to answer you. We do intermediate challenges every 2 weeks. And then we've got cash prizes every 2 weeks for those intermediate challenges. But, you know, it's only like $600 on these little intermediate challenges, whereas there's, you know, $3,000 on the line during the finale. So these exhibition games count for a little bit, Daniel, and I'll flash up a graphic for a moment and then bring our faces back on. But you can see that today there are individual prizes for first, second, and third of 300, 200, 100. And students are getting points both for lessons that they taught us that you guys missed, unfortunately, but you can check in the VOD. But each of these students taught us a 10-minute lesson, which I graded them on their teaching skill. And now they're playing a match, and they'll also get points from the match. And we'll combine those scores to determine who wins the individual prizes that you see up here. So there's a few $100s on the line, but as I said, in the finals, there's going to be $3,000 on the line versus $600. So there may be something that you would want to hold back today. I don't know. Or you might want to like use everything you have to make a statement and, let people know to fear you in the future. It's very, very handy in chess to be feared. Garry Kasparov spent a lot of effort trying to make his opponents fear him. I spent a lot of time trying to get my opponents to fear me when I was a professional player. And there's one other thing as well, which is if you get first place today, you get a top half seed in the finals. So the finals are going to be these matches, and everyone will play all 3 rounds. But if you win in the first round, then you're in the winner's bracket, right? If you lose in the first round, you're in the loser's bracket. So getting a top seed is going to get you a lower ranked opponent in the first round during the finals. That could be worth quite a bit and could on its own be enough justification for going all out today. But I don't know for each player how much they're going all out today, and for each coach how much they like counseled their players to go all out versus, to save something or whatever. Okay, you want to know who the players are? Yeah. All right, so to my left, well, which might be your right, over here we've got Ty, Chess Numbers. Okay, you may know him from some of you may know him from Twitter, where he post statistical analyses of like the odds of Carlsen or Nepo winning their match after each game. He updates it, stuff like that. To my other side here, we've got Rengao, and he is on Team Sasha. Below me, of course, Drittman. Over here, but underneath Ty, we have Lars, Morphe fan. He's a fan of Morphe's. And all the way down below me and Drittman is Falk. Kostya revealing some of the coaching practices here in the dojo. His guys, and that is actually Drittman and Falk straight below me. That's Kostya's team, just right below me. They were told to strike hard and strike fast, but then afterwards to show mercy in order to confuse the opponents. All right, so we can expect them to gain big advantages and then blow it to, suck the others in for something. I don't know. The full strategy will only be revealed in an interview after the team has won the finals. Let's click away from this Rui Lopez for a moment and check out our only game that's not a Rui Lopez. We've got the Sveshnikov Sicilian here. Let's just see a little bit what happened here. Drittman played A4, attacking B5. First, actually, he showed some interesting theoretical knowledge with this H4 move here. The idea is bishop H4, queen H5, and Black's in bad shape on the H file. So he throws in H4. Now, normally Black would want to keep the bishop on H6, but Seth looks like he was unfamiliar with the H4 idea and retreated to F6. So that should give Drittman confidence that he's got a good position here. Seth just developed with bishop E6 rather than trying to defend the pawn on B5. And let's see what his justification is for sacking that pawn, because Drittman is taking that pawn. Seth moves the knight and strikes in the center. So Drittman has sort of got his pawn for free, but Seth has dealt with the weakness on D5, and White has a slightly loose position, right? Because they played H4. So are they going to castle or just tuck the king on F1? What are they going? How are they going to activate the knight, the bishop? That should be doable. Are there extra points for the senseis for creative trash talk? There are not, Foos Chess. No. The show's really supposed to be focused around, teaching and coaching skill. And the other stuff is just for fun. Just for fun. just to entertain all our viewers, try and make the show cool. So yeah, it's just bonus, but it won't get them any prize money. But Kostya and Sasha, it is an honor to have you here in the chat room with us. So thank you for being there, for rooting on your players. It was great to meet your new player, Dai, today. Really fun. I can see he's got a very high. I can see immediately he's got a very high, potential or like ceiling for how good he can get. All right, Drittman goes for the trade, but he thought about it for a while because I think he's already thinking to himself, if Black takes back with the bishop, how's he going to defend G2? Let's see which way Seth takes back. Seth does take back with the bishop. So Dripman is going to have to like have some idea here of what to do about g2. And the other thing Dripman needs to watch out for is his clock, because I was watching a recent training session of his with Kostya, and his clock was at like 3 seconds, like every game for no well, not for no reason, but I mean, not necessarily, not necessarily because every single game was like the kind of game that should get you down to 3 seconds on the clock. So Laurent in chat thinking that Seth's position is difficult. Dripman plays 93 quickly. I'm very happy to see that from him. Well, I mean, Kostya is going to be very happy to see that for him, I think. I'm objective-ish or whatever, but I think this is like a very good sign that if you put a bunch of time in on ED5, folks, if you're putting in a bunch of time, you should have a follow-up, Like, the reason you're thinking about ED5 is because you don't know what to do about one of their moves, right? You're trying to figure something out. So if you think for a while about it, and then your opponent plays a not surprising move, suppose Seth played like knight f5, sacking the bishop. Okay, you're surprised, you can think again. But this is the number one move that Dripman should have been thinking that Seth might play, and he had planned a response, right? He had planned a response, and look, after bishop g2, quickly rook g1. He'd seen this, he'd planned it, and he's going to take Seth down in game one. Seth's going to fight on for a few moves because he doesn't resign, but he could resign here against Dripman. In my opinion, Dripman's looking great. I think he's going to not get below 20 seconds this game. If Kostya has any thoughts about that, he can chime in if he wants to or not. But it is showing good time usage from Dripman here, and good. I mean, the moves are good, but that's just one part of chess. One part of chess is playing good moves. It also matters like how you get to those moves. If you use your time well, if you're out of time, if you flag up a piece, then it almost didn't matter that you played good moves to win the piece, right? Yeah, Dripman looking loose here. And it looks like he's singing a song, maybe a nursery rhyme. Looks kind of like Jack and Jill went up the hill, maybe. Yeah, there he just stopped with like water for a minute. Others all look focused. And Seth is leaning in a little bit upset. The other four players looking focused at the moment. 10-minute lesson on playing good chess moves. That's quite a topic. That is quite a topic. All right, so King H8 played by Seth. The bishop's there for the taking. Yeah, you may think it's weird that I'm downplaying what a good move this was. Kostya said it was a good move. Kostya was happy with this move. It is a great move. But I think the best sign is that, he really used his time and his thought process and everything really well. All right. Let's go on to one of the other boards. Let's see which one looks the most chaotic. I'd say Falk and Bob Joe Jim looks like it's a little bit more imminent action we need to deal with. So let's just see. I always like to know the context of something. So b5 was played, then knight d4 takes here, and Bob Joe Jim, he's just busting out those bishops. Remember, that was our big question, was whether these bishops would be open or get locked out by white center, and they're open. Bob Joe Jim has opened it all up. White's bishops are also going to be open against Black's king, so it's going to be a double-edged, double bishop position here. Falk getting a little bit low on time, and he just looks a little bit more tired, maybe, versus like the energy of some of the others. And that is, to be expected. It's 11:30 p.m. in Germany, and the other competitors here are all playing from somewhere in the Americas at the moment. But his clock ticking down a bit. He's gonna need to keep up the pace as well as the focus here. Whose webcam do you want to look at, Machakos? That's up to you. They're all there for you to choose. You've got your buffet of contestants. before you. Interesting move for Falk here would be queen d3. Queen d3. If f5, then, you know, bishop b3 or queen c4 starts to trade everything off from black. Queen d3, knight f6, however, defends h7, and black, I think, would be perfectly happy to do that. And white is still up a pawn. White is still up a pawn. The finals, we're going to try and make them just a little bit earlier than we've made our intermediate shows to make it a little less unfair for Falk and Maestro. That's correct, Mitch. We're probably going to move it up a little bit. Nice. That's good to hear, Cauliflower. I hear that laughing is kind of good for your health. Maybe like bad for the wrinkles in your face. I think I'm going to have I already have a pretty wrinkly face for my age, but I think I'm always going to have like an extremely wrinkly face because I spend so much time laughing. But worth, as they say, right? When they die in an online video game, worth. It's worth it. A lifetime of mirth for a few wrinkles, you know, or a few dozen wrinkles. Yeah. So I had originally scheduled the finals to be played maybe at like noon and 2, partly so we could catch some chess.com raids like we did today. So, you know, awesome for that. But I think it's just going to be too unfair to make Maestro play the whole finals at like 1 a.m. So we'll probably move it up 1 or 2 hours compared to what I had planned. Yeah, this position's super tense here, even without horses, right? We've got like checkmate threats. We've got checkmate threats. Whew. I mean, I guess from one perspective, it's like who just has more checkmate threats. But the other thing to look for is like who's got other ancillary undefended things, right? Other than just the checkmates. Because that's what you sometimes need. Sometimes you need a double attack. Sometimes it's not enough to just like, you know, brute force it straight down. You think Nargave's going to let the kid play a couple moves for him? Yeah, could be. Could be. I see pretty deadly focus from everybody at the moment. Is Seth in the game or not? Let's see, rook g2, knight f5. Oh, the idea was like knight takes f5, queen g2. And Drittman's trying to refute that too. He spent 3 minutes on this move, so he's not assuming he's got the game. He's still working hard. Hopefully he's not going to do that 3-second thing. Oh, Nargave's got the kid again. Pass him back. For those interested in becoming a student, I mean, all of these senseis teach private lessons, so you could apply to them privately if you wanted a coach, you know, and you can definitely watch a couple of their lessons with their students and then have an idea of which teacher you want to approach for lessons. But if you're interested not just in being a student, Tebow, but you're interested in being on this show, Ultimate Sensei, it is a show where we just take open applications and then we put, you know, a dozen players in to the show, and you can apply just the same as anybody else to be on this show, and we'll announce season 3 at some point, and that'll be the time. So and each season there's a different 200-point rating range. So you also have to see what the next season's rating range is. Season 3 is, I believe, going to be 1,000 to 1,200 will be the rating range for season 3. And we'll go every season a different 200-point rating range, and we'll go through a bunch of them. All right, Drittman just recaptures on e3, which was correct. 35 seconds used there. Technically speaking, black doesn't even have a pawn against the extra bishop, but the white king is, you know, sort of slam in the middle of the board. So Drittman's going to want to, you know, take control of this game and also avoid running out of time. Back to our tense position. Bob Joe Jim has a long think and goes for a tactic. We came back just in time. So, Let's see. Bishop f2 check. Oh, and by the way, when I say those ratings, those are FIDE equivalent ratings. So they're like 100 points lower than like a chess.com rapid rating, for example. So like Jailer, if you're 1199 in chess.com rapid ratings, then you're right in the middle of what the next season would be, because 1,000 to 1,200 FIDE is, maybe like 1,100 to 1,300 chess.com rapid. So, all right, let's figure out what's going on with this violent move from Bob Joe Jim. I mean, he did win our tactics challenge, so we should take his moves seriously. Obviously, White's going to play King f2, but they're thinking before doing it. I mean, if you just move your king away and let Black take your rook, that's it's not an option. But let's just see what he's got coming. King f2, Queen c5. I mean, Queen c5 is the only really tactical move I see. I had mentioned, right, that in addition to the checkmate threats, we had to look for what was ancillary hanging stuff. So king takes, queen check, king back to f1, I suppose. Queen takes c2, bishop takes h6, and then Black can sack on g2 to take the queen off. Queen g2, bishop g2, king g2, g takes h6. Rook takes e5. White's much better in that endgame. Yeah, there's a counter and then a counter, right? So White's going to retaliate against bishop f2 with bishop h6. Black's going to retaliate against bishop h6 with queen g2. And then finally, White's going to retaliate with rook takes e5 at the end. And that's what's going to give White a rook endgame that's borderline winning. Borderline winning. Thank you, hashtag, for the raid. I imagine you guys all know what this is. This is Ultimate Sensei, which hashtag chess was in season 1. So it's great to see you. It's great to see you all. We're thinking about you every time we do this. White won't have time to take on g7 with the bishop, because when Black takes on g2 in my variation, it'll be check to the White king on f1. So it'll all be check. White will have to recapture everything. But this whole variation brings up a very, very important chess concept, which I like to bring up now and then because I feel like it's very, very rarely taught. And I call it the ebb and flow of energy in a chess position. The ebb and flow of energy. Basically, one of my theories is that when you go for a tactic, you're burning up your own tactical energy often to create that tactic. So at the end of the tactic, White's not going to have a hanging bishop on c2 anymore because you've traded it off, for example, right? So Black's using up the weak things White had to generate their tactic. And also, right after you do a tactic, you're often very, very exposed at the end of it. Because I'm not going to get into like a full 2-hour lecture on the subject, but for example, when you take your opponent's piece at the end of a tactic, the piece that captures at the end is usually going to be, hanging itself, right? It's going to be out there dangling in the opponent's position or something like that, right? So right after you go for a tactic, your opponent often has a chance to go for a tactic. But here it goes both ways, right? See, right after Black does this, and Black's vulnerable here. But if White puts the bishop on h6, going for a tactic, right? You guys understand the bishop on h6 is vulnerable at that moment itself, right? And based on that bishop being vulnerable, Black can go for a tactic. You see what I mean? And at the end of all of this, notice that what I call sort of the key point, that this pawn is hanging. This pawn was defended before Black went for their tactics. See, every Black piece was defended here, right? But at the end of the line that I'm predicting, that pawn on e5 is undefended because Black has thrown all their energy at the position, right? And at the end, they've got stuff dangling. So queen takes c2 has been played. Bishop takes h6 played quickly by Falk. He has to play everything quickly. Actually, 15 seconds is not even quickly when you've got 35. That's a big chunk of your time, my friend. Because that queen g2 line works so badly, yeah, it's possible that Black might go for queen g6 instead of queen g2. I mean, queen g2 just doesn't work. So now Bob Joe Jim's going to be looking for other options here. But I mean, g6, bishop f8 is not much of an option. So what's he looking at other than sacking on g2? Or queen g6? Queen g6, has a trap that if white takes it, white would lose the bishop on h6. Okay, he's going for queen g2 in this whole endgame, which we saw coming. I'm just going to back up and show you guys the other option, because we already visualized this position 5 minutes ago, right? And we'll get to talk about this rook ending in a second. It'll be fun. But look at this tactic. This is a very, very unusual way to like win / lose a piece. What a trap that would have been, right? So against queen g6, white would have had to take the time to save this bishop probably on this move. You know, bishop e3 or something. That would have been a better option for black, maybe even. I'm surprised that since he was like regrouping, he didn't consider that. White's king, by the way, slightly going the wrong way here with king g3 f4. The king's goal is to get to this pawn. You want your king to come to this pawn. I don't know about moving this. That seems random and not helpful. Let's see how Drittman's doing. Oh my gosh, it's still scary for Drittman. But Drittman is not down to 13 seconds. He's the one with a minute left. That's really, really good. That's what we want to see for him. Although king h3, rook h1 looks scary. So his king doesn't really have an easy hide here. King f2, queen f5. Seth's showing that, don't resign value at this level. Wow. So if Drittman wants to win, he has to look at king g4, which is so scary. So scary. I mean, it would have to be like king g4, f5, king h5, f4 check, then you've got rook g5 saving you. I mean, he'd have to be looking at something like that. That's like a scary, scary choice to make. I don't know which he will make. He does go for it. He likes to win. And this game, they're down to 10 seconds and they still have all their pieces. Wow. The end result of this game will be somewhat randomized by time pressure as Rangel tries to crack open the dark squares for the unopposed bishop. Potentially, if he can come back here at some point, that would be amazing for him. So trade. He's also sacked 2 pawns at this point. That starts to be a lot. How's Drittman doing? Oh, instead of f5, Seth plays h5 check, and Drittman is mated. That's the end of that. Oh, and he's going to have to recover from that. Holy moly, he was up a piece. And Seth just played that game. Seth doesn't know whether to feel bad for his friend or good for his theory about not resigning, which he has just justified his attitude very much. And has Falk's endgame practice worked out for him? Does he see how to win this endgame? Why is he throwing away that pawn? Just go. Oh my goodness, he could have just already had this pawn. And Drittman takes the maximum time on his clock pretty much to resign and recover for the second game. That is good use of your time in a 2-game match. Looks like he's going to try and run for water or the bathroom. This was like a heinous move here, c7 by Falk. I mean, clearly black played a heinous move at some point themselves with putting the rook on b6 instead of just leaving it on b8. Really, really risky. And this is just completely winning for white if Falk played king f5. Instead, it looks like the game's going to sort of keep going a little bit. White's still completely winning, but very bad sign. When you see a move like this, you can't assume that somebody's winning just because it's a winning position. I mean, because he could have already been on f7 while black's king was here, right? Okay, black's going to resign anyway. Okay, I would never resign any position, folks, where my opponent had just made a blunder like c7. Never. Okay? Do not to the not. Do not ever resign against opponent in a position that's losing because of something that your opponent clearly doesn't see. Right? The winning idea for white had nothing to do with throwing away their c-pawns. You should never resign there. Okay. Let's check this game. Whoa, it looks like Rangel's coming in with something similar to checkmate. He has crashed through. And he has taken down in game 1 Morphethan, who was ranked number 1 in the power rankings this week. If anybody missed them, new power rankings came out this week. And I do remember correctly. I'm not going to say if I remember correctly. I do remember correctly that Mitch and I both ranked Morphe first. And he's been taken down by Rengao, who was ranked tied for dead last. Now, Rengao is a newer replacement who's had less time with his coach, but this really worked out for him. Let's just see. I mean, they had 10 seconds in this position here. And I'm sure that Slow Dumb's going to have something to say to her student about, having every single piece still on the board with 10 seconds on the clock. Like maybe you want some of your time for this phase right here. But let's see how good his moves with 10 seconds on the clock were. So Lars took there, and he threatened knight f6. That was a good spot. It's much more stereotyped to go like bishop b2 or f4. But a move like knight e4 is harder to see coming. So that may have been annoying for the opponent. Rook e6, hits it. Oh, man, he just crashed through immediately. And then hits the knight, f6, f4. Black's got to try something. No, Black can't play knight d7 or knight g4. His moves were really good here, actually. And then just the rook takes. Found everything. Okay. Yeah, Slowdum says, at least for her own heart attacks, she's going to want to work on this, even if the moves he played there happened to be very good moves. It looks like all the players opted for 5-second breaks between their games, but not too much. And there you go, folks. 1 d4 game already for us with the color switch, and Seth probably also d4 against Dritman. And then we'll wait to see what Tai plays with white against Falk. No draws yet. Oh no, Slowdum is coaching Maurice. Slowdum is Rengao's coach. So she can be happy with the moves he played. But she didn't enjoy having a heart attack, despite the win. So, Dirk Xavier, you want a replay of Seth's checkmate? It is a pretty sweet checkmate. It's all on the H file, which is not going to be captured in this view for a moment. Let me just grab it. I'm going to give it to you. I mean, if you like replays of checkmates, you're one of my kind, so I'll give you the replay. So this was the moment. Dritman, I think, has to resign himself to king f2, queen f5, king g3, queen e5 with a draw, despite being up a piece. And doesn't want it. Goes king g4. Probably planning to risk, f5, king h5. Just very, very risky. But h5 is played instead of f5. And now the king is just completely boxed in, right? Forced to h3, rook h1, check, rook h2, and checkmate. And Mitch points out that not only did Rengao beat the number 1 in the power rankings, but all 3 of the lower ranked players in the power rankings won in round 1 against the higher ranked players in the power rankings. I think Mitch and I would probably agree that despite making power rankings, it felt really close from 1 all the way down to 6 at this point in the season. And we don't yet know where to rank Dai and Maestro because they've just come in this week. So, yeah, it looks really, really close between these players. Let's see. Bob Joe Jim played e4. So we had 4 e4s and 2 d4s in today's matches. We get a c3 Sicilian from him. Let's just see who knows this opening more or less confidently between Bob Joe Jim and Falcon. It looks like Bob Joe Jim is the first. That's chess numbers, by the way, over here. Chess numbers over here. First one to stop and think. And let's see where everybody's rapid ratings are at right now. Seth is at 1560, which is a very high rating for Seth. He's never been over 1600. His high is about 1580 from sometime in the last month or two during the season. Dritman at 1650. It's a solid rating, but he's been there before. Nargave at 1645. I think he's been 1700. And Rangao at 1750. That's very high. And Falk at 1694. That's going to be one of Falk's highest ratings. He was about 1650 2 weeks ago when I checked. So most of the players doing pretty well. And I guess Seth is the only one under 1600 out of these 6 at the moment. But he is having no trouble holding his own recently in this competition. Dritman's just played like a crazy move here with knight c3. What is going on with that move? I mean, queen c2 is forced. Seth looks completely confused. Oh yeah, I didn't completely finalize the scores on the lessons. I was taking notes about strengths and weaknesses in the lessons. I've got, I think, tentative scores for the lessons, but I wanted to think about it just a little bit more to be sure before I made them official. I wanted to go back in my head and mull over it and compare the lessons to each other a little bit more. You know, it was a lot to do to produce the show, facilitate the lessons, and also grade them. So I'm not going to say for sure what the scores are yet on the lessons, but I'm happy to hear what you guys thought the best lessons were. That would be very interesting to hear. You guys can discuss that. I'll remain objective, but what lessons do you guys think you learned the most from, or that you thought other people in chat might have learned the most from? I feel like Drit's just throwing away this piece on c3. I don't really know what the plan could be to use it there. It looked like Laurent probably could just... I mean, Laurent, do you want to just give the grades instead of me to make it a little bit more objective? If you... It seemed like you graded every single lesson. Knight, bishop. Okay, so from a King's Indian defense with f3, we get into a Benoni structure. This sometimes happens with the f3 variations against the King's Indian. Black can attack it with c5 instead of e5, and then white pushes past for space. And yeah, one idea that's very weird that you'll see black do in these positions is h5, h4. a6 is the typical Benoni idea with b5, but white basically never allows that. Just play a4 and don't allow it. It's pretty much that simple. Queen e7. So black's not doing anything with h5. They're just playing kind of like normal Benoni moves for the moment. And we can see Nargeth like much more comfortable on the clock probably. Although, I mean, it is to be said that Nargeth is somebody who tends to play quickly. In general, you know, if you see him with a lot of time on the clock, it doesn't always mean that he's comfortable and knows the position and all that. Like, it is part of like how he... It is true that he'll sometimes play quickly when he doesn't have a ton of knowledge about the position. Dritman's lecture, Mitch, which was excellent, was about sort of sensing when you should be going for something, sensing when you shouldn't settle, sensing when you should be playing aggressive moves, and you know, and then also like about how to follow up once you get the initiative. Yeah. Sort of like how having confidence in your position can help you make the right decisions there. I think overall, yeah, I like Nargeth's position here. But, you know, after that whole discussion, we actually see him like, you know, slowing down and actually using some time on this position. But overall, unless something's obviously gone black's way, my default in a Benoni structure is to like white. So let's click around. What happened here? DE5, queen D1. So looks like a successful opening for Falk, initially at least. Oh, and bishop E3 really walked into knight C4. That was a clear mistake. from Bob Joe Jim. We see a respectful minute plus spent by Falk on knight c4. You know, he was like really like, does my opponent see something I don't see? But then finally went for it, and Bob Joe Jim just said, yep, it's an error. He could have also tried bishop d4 here, but then perhaps after rook d8, he's just making things worse and worse for himself. So he went bishop c1, gave up a pawn, brought his bishop back out, and this knight, I mean, it can hop back into d3 or c4 here. But then he's going to have to worry about bishop a4, and he can't castle. That's what Bob Joe Jim has in mind now. Falk is up 1-0. So let's keep that in mind here as we watch all these final matches, right? These players are trying to win a 2-game match against their opponent. And for anybody who lost in the first game, they're in a must-win situation. If they win that game, they know that if it were the finals 2 weeks from now, because the final tournament is going to use this two-game match format, they'll know that if they were in the finals, they would play a tiebreak. Today, we don't have time for that because our own Kostya Kavutsky is going to be commenting the Pan Am next, and so we're going to want to switch over to that around 3 o'clock. It looks like we're going to spill over 5 or 10 minutes, but you know, we knew all along that we were sort of time constrained at 3, so we're not going to do like an endless tiebreaker. But in any case, everybody who lost in the first game can practice here, like how would they play in a 2-game match when they're down 1, right? And they're just trying to get to that tiebreaker. And if you get to that tiebreaker, then you're happy, right? So that's what they're going to be practicing. I mean, maybe the answer is you just play normally. Like the thing to practice is to not play any differently. But that could be a good thing, right? I mean, if you look at how Drittman started this game, I mean, several people felt like this knight c3 move might be kind of like a tilty move, right? And after queen c2, it looks like he's going to lose a piece here to a3, kicking the bishop off of the knight. So, you know, maybe Drittman didn't play normally this game, and the challenge is when you've lost a game to just play normally the next game. And that's what you have the chance to practice there. So casual players saying Falk should just play knight c6 just so that bishop a4 can be, you know, ignored by castling. I think that's almost certainly correct, but I mean, bear in mind knight d3 check here is totally an option. Depending on the size of your advantage and what you expect your opponent to do, you could totally play like this in a game because, I mean, knight b2 is going to win a pawn and hit the bishop. So this might force white to play bishop c1 and then, you know, g5, king g7, or just like rook c8 here. And this could be totally fine. So, yeah, depending on various factors, you know, knight d3 would maybe be something that you want to look at. And that would get at actually Bob Joe Jim's lesson, right? Bob Joe Jim's lesson for us was that sometimes you're like, oh, bishop a4 check, I reject this idea. But sometimes you're really like missing out on opportunities by rejecting things too fast, assuming you can't play king f8. Like knight d3 is like a pretty strong move, right? So maybe bishop a4, king f8. Like, I think Bob Joe Jim would tell Falk you should consider that. You shouldn't just play on instinct, right? He said that's the trap he falls into a lot, is just playing on instinct. And I think the 3.5 minutes Falk spent on this show that Falk did take knight d3 seriously. But yeah, to Brendo, it's 1400 to 1600 FIDE. So that corresponds to a chess.com range of about 1500 to 1700. There's a little wiggle room depending on, you know, whether people have FIDE ratings or Blitz ratings or Rapid ratings or USCF ratings or Canadian Federation ratings, you know, or etc. like that. And then also many of these players have gained, you know, 50 points already this season. It's certainly possible to gain 100 or 200 points, and you don't get kicked out of the season if you gain too many points, right? So, you know, they should have started from the draft with a strength, you know, in that range. And Laurent says Kimmy looked stronger than 2,000 FIDE in season 1, which was 1,800 to 2,000 FIDE. But would you say, Laurent, that she looked stronger than 2,000 on day 1? Or 4 weeks in? Or after the finals? I think she was probably close to 2,000 FIDE level at the start, but I don't think that most people would have said she was clearly stronger than it as we started the event. And I think that most of the coaches wanted to first pick Mitch at the time. So I don't know that it was totally clear. But in the finals, she obviously played really, really strongly. I mean, but I would say like unrecognizably strongly compared to how strong she had been at the beginning, which is, you know, truly the goal of this show. Now, I mean, I might not be objective because I was coaching her, but of course, the more objective you are, the better you can coach. So, I mean, I did try to be objective about what was going on there so I could, you know, evaluate things the best and give her the best help. Rating comparisons from chess goals would suggest that there's only about a 50-point difference, says Daniel. Okay. I definitely feel like it's about 100 points, but, I mean, my feeling is not worth more than a statistical analysis. So don't worry. I also feel like statistical analyses are potentially more accurate than my feelings. Okay, let's see what's going on here with Drittman this game, which was like accelerating into stuff. Took on c4, lost this piece, took on e2. Oh, man, what a weird idea. White can't take because of pawn takes, pawn hitting the queen. Although an interesting move here for white is rook takes bishop, right? But that would be 3 pieces. Instead, white tried this, just blocking out the bishop. And the knight, oh no, the knight's not trapped. It can take on c1. Okay. Okay, okay. Okay, Mitch says chess goals is super inaccurate. So maybe chess goals is not a fantastically accurate statistical analysis, and this time my feeling will have been more accurate. Once it takes c1, it's trapped, yes, but taking c1 means that it traded rather than being lost, right? So, yeah, so taking on c1 is worth more than taking on d4. On d4, you get 1 pawn for your knight. On c1, you get a whole bishop for your knight. Yeah. Will you be able to check the VODs, you know, if you want to see the students' lessons? I think that overall the students did a great job. It wasn't just an exercise for them. It actually produced good lessons that you all can learn from. So, yeah. I think anywhere up to like 1,800 or even in some of the lessons up to 2,000, some of the lessons would be interesting. So, yeah. Knight takes g3. Why not take the bishop? What? What is going on? That's like incomprehensible and unrecognizable. I mean, just take a bishop instead of a pawn. I can think that he might be concerned that on knight takes bishop, white has knight e5, and he has no way to save his rook, right? Like c6, knight takes c6. He might assume that's all like completely losing. But that stuff usually doesn't lose a rook, right? Like normally after c6, knight takes c6, just don't take it, right? Play a move like queen here. And when the knight takes, your rook can escape or something like that, right? But also your position here as black is bad enough that you should embrace like knight e5, queen d4. Not embrace like, you're like, yeah, I want to play this, but like embrace calculating it. You need to look for things like this. If you're going to do any of what Ty said about like assuming something and rejecting it without really looking at it, you're never going to come back. You really need to look for, you really need to look for any possible chance. So not only do you usually not lose a rook after c6, knight c6, but you definitely would need to calculate it. And not only do you need to calculate it, but you need to calculate queen d4. Right? Hitting the rook, hitting the knight, you know, and depending what this knight does, sometimes knight d3, introducing like all kinds of mess to the proceedings. And I imagine that after knight c1, Seth would have just taken it, you know? And then, you know, he could have played bishop b7 castles. And then he would be down one pawn versus knight, right? But the way he's playing, he's now down 2 pieces for 2 pawns instead of 1 piece for 1 pawn. So, yeah. Not putting in that tough performance in this game here. So it'll be something for him and Kostya to talk about what he's going to do if he starts out down 1-0 in the matches at any point next in the finals. I mean, he's going to have 3 matches. There's a good chance he'll start out one of those 3 matches down 1-0. So it'll be a useful thing, fruitful thing to talk about and work on for them. Drittman, you know, coming off of winning the Endgame challenge, and he shot up Mitch in my power rankings. I think we may have had him in 2nd place overall. But he's getting hammered by Seth right now. In fact, he's just resigned here. Yeah. And Seth looks satisfied with his performance today, but we don't have time to dwell on it. Let's check out this action here. Bob Joe Jim, knight b5, threatening knight c7 or knight d6. Black castles, bishop f3, e5, bishop g3, and then bishop d3. Seemingly a tactical move that could destroy white. And we see why Falk threw in e5 before playing bishop d3, actually. Bishop d3, knight c7. And if you take the rook, white takes the rook, etc. It's a mess. And if rook c8, then rook d1. The knight's temporarily defended. You're counterattacking the bishop. It doesn't look like black's winning anything. So he throws in e5, then bishop g3, then bishop d3. White might have a way out of it, but it doesn't look promising. Knight c7 is the move you've got to try. And then if rook c8, you have to be trying rook to d1. And if black plays e4, then your knight's defended again. Okay. There comes the rook. It's messy. It's messy to calculate. I'm glad that Falk is not is neither like blitzing it out nor using up all his clock, because he's sometimes been too low on time. I've sensed a little lack of confidence in his play at some times recently. Yeah, there's a lot of tactical options for white and black here, so I don't know if black's going to come out winning more material or not. But honestly, even if black doesn't win more material, their position is improved, right? The rook's kind of coming out with tempo. E5 got played, so black should have ways to get a good position, but if they miscalculate and try to win the game with a tactic that doesn't work, it's going to hurt them. Seth and Drittman, you guys are free to stick around or go as you please or prefer. You guys are, you know, if you want to hang around and watch, if you want to chat, you're welcome. And if you want to, like, head out and do other things, you're also welcome to do that. So totally up to you guys here. We got 2 interesting positions on our hands. One is yield Benoni, which Drittman and I both have some experience with, and something weird just happened there too. So both games are kind of at critical moments. So Rangel arranged f5, coming into contact with white here. Now, if his a8 rook were like on f7, maybe he could fight white where white has white's pawn majority, but my instinct would be that he can't really fight white here. Oh, there's just 2 games, Queen Desire, and I'm going to bounce back and forth between those 2 games. So white took, and if black eliminates this bishop, white takes here with check, thus sort of gaining a pawn. But, you know, black could dream that somehow the bishop pair is going to help him out with with that situation. But he played here. Bishop f4. Yeah. Black's position doesn't look miserable. I don't know if Dritman's going to have a different position than me because he's also suffered with this stuff a little bit. But black's position does not look completely miserable. The d5 pawn is like a little bit weak. The piece on e5 is decent for the moment. The f5 pawn stops knight g4 and knight e4. It's an isolated pawn, but I would say on balance livable, just based on the relative piece activity that white and black have. Honestly, I would say Rengau's playing this Benoni better than I play it. Yeah, as far as the Benoni goes, this is fine, which is the problem. Yeah. Which is the problem. Seth, do you have any strong emotional feelings about the Benoni?
No, it's kind of I don't like mind it, but I don't think like, oh yeah, Benoni, I'm gonna crush this. I think it is kind of difficult to play against because it's like one of those positions that's like optically very good, but then you have to like come up with a plan. And sometimes like when you try to make like too active of a plan, you get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's from the white player's perspective.
So, right. Yeah.
I've never played it with black. Yeah.
So the reason that I stopped playing it as black is so I was looking for something imbalanced against what?
Sorry, Nargave's son is licking his head while he tries to play, and it was like one thing to play with your kid sitting on your lap, but then he's like licking your head. It's like, wow, that's a disadvantage.
Yeah, I was going to say, no matter what's going on with the position, Nargave is giving kid odds. So.
Yeah, he's giving some major odds there once the kid's licking him.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Sorry about that, Drit, but I mean...
No, that's much better than talking about the Benoni.
Yeah,
no.
A special moment.
But so I was looking for something imbalanced against d4, and I was like, oh, c5 is a move. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of... You could try to convince yourself it's similar to the King's Indian in the sense that like you're giving away the center for an attack on a side of the board. But the problem with the Benoni is that the attack on the side of the board that you get, even if you get it, is the queen side, which is not where the kings are. In the King's Indian defense, you at least the attack that you get is on the king side, so you can actually go for mate. Like if you break through in the Benoni, you can still lose because your attack is kind of slower because it's not a mate threat. It's like a space on the queen side threat. So the problem is that even if it goes well, it doesn't often lead to wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the way I play the King's Indian, I get a lot of times I'll get Benoni structures out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The thing Dritman said also can apply to the white side of the King's Indian defense. There's a lot of times where white's like crushing black on the queen side and crushes black on the queen side first, yet black lands some lucky blow on the king side, like
exactly
when you already thought like I should be winning, but
yeah, it's hard to play. It's hard to play on the for me. It's like that's been a bit of an adjustment. It's like being like knowing when it's okay to play on the queen side when your opponent
can't even see the board. He put the blanket over his head. Oh, Nargave.
This is sabotage, yeah.
Well, now he knows what...
Rengau has to sack a bishop or something.
Well, Rengau's away from the board, so...
And Rengau's not even at the board.
Yeah, what's going on?
Maybe he's on the phone with Nargave's kid, like, yeah, that's good. Just a little more.
Good. Now get the comforter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see Icy asking a question in chat. No, I don't play d4 f5. I play Nimzo Queen's Indian.
Yeah. He's like, pillow fights are really fun. Just clock him. Just blindside him with that thing.
Yeah, that's...
Oh my god.
That's good strategy right there.
Well, it's clear what Andras and Nargave have to do for the finals in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They need to find a way to remove the attacker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some people call the kid the King's Indian defense, but it's a little different for Nargith.
Yeah, Nargate needs to deputize the queen for the defense here.
Queen for defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, he came up with a move after 4 minutes and 22 seconds of struggling with his kid. That was brutal. Like just how much that took off his clock here. It doesn't look like he's got any help coming either. I think he's done. You could stick a fork in Nargave here.
Oh man, he's so annoying. He's got the like, calm Canadian demeanor to him.
I know. But he's
Gotta be
like,
getting
all I need is like 2 minutes, like literally 2 minutes of like not
Jesus.
being on me. Oh.
Oh man.
Yeah, this is rough. So I think he's done. Let's see how Bob Joe Jim is doing against Falk.
Let's go,
How did he
Falk.
work his way out of this tactic? So Rook FT1, Bishop E2. What a weird, pointless move from Falk. That move was not it.
What?
That
Wait, sorry, that doesn't.
on
Yeah.
move 21, he just threw his bishop into thin air on E2. I mean, there was no
Okay.
value in
Whoa.
doing that.
Yeah. Does that lose a piece?
No, because the knight on C7.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
lose a piece because the knight's on C7, but like it doesn't
Wow.
win anything, right? You're
Yeah,
trying to
you can
win
only
something.
You can only take one or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And if you can't win anything, you're better off just leaving your piece to die so that you get the first positional move after the tactics, right? Like rook takes knight, rook takes rook. You could play f6 if you want to defend your e-pawn and keep the g3 bishop at bay or something, right? Like at minimum, if you've got no winning tactic,
Yeah.
you want to be the first one playing like the positional move when the tactics are done.
Well,
So
can't
bishop
you
e2
throw-
just...
Can't you just throw your piece away on a better? I haven't studied the position enough, but could he throw his piece away on a better square like a6 or e6? Just like, all right, if you want it.
Yeah, he could have. He had a lot of options. And I will freely admit it was a confusing position,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't know what the right move was, but I know for sure it wasn't what Falk played there, right? Like 2.5 minutes to play like an unthinkably bad move that wasn't on the candidate list. That, like, either he should have just played something random quickly or not a terrible move.
I mean, I agree. We
Yeah.
should try to not play bad moves.
This is the life.
Dude, this reminds me
the,
of every single
level player.
speed run on YouTube by some grandmaster. It's like, did you know that if you calculate like a grandmaster, you too can be a grandmaster?
Is that like what they're trying to get at?
Every speed run, some people really like it as oh, did that
Mhm.
hang an entire?
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry. Every educational speedrun on YouTube from like a grandmaster, I'm like, I don't know why people like these because it's not any usable advice in any of them.
I kind of get it, like watching like Kosted with them. Like he's like giving you, he's like explaining like the typical mistake that the player, right? Because it's like he's gonna spot it because he's a master. And
Sure.
Right.
so you can see like what's the mistake the player is making.
Mm-hmm.
So you can and he can you hear him go, okay,
That's fair.
that's a problem and this is how we're going to take advantage of it. So I think
Yeah.
maybe hearing that is what people like about it.
This, by the way, is an incredibly like tense endgame here, right? Where like White's bishop is shut down on g3, but White's got the 7th rank, and Black's got issues with the back rank, but the Knight's better, and like both sides, queen sides, are falling apart.
I think black is a lot better here.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
well,
interesting that he's like
not if
trying
White
to use
doubles
rook
it.
c1 to keep White from doubling rooks on the 2nd rank. It's very interesting, right? That choice there.
right. So,
Falk
yeah.
is
Because here's
trying
the
to
thing,
trade one
black
rook.
is going to play h6
Mhm.
next.
Yeah.
h6. Okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, if I'm White, right, I'm like gonna double and
You can't.
I'm gonna get luffed then double.
I think the move here for White's going to be h4, and then
Right.
Black's probably going to play rook c1 because I think he's afraid of
Yeah.
White doubling rooks on his 7th rank. So he'll play rook c1. They'll trade a
yeah,
rook.
yeah.
Then he'll play either h6 or king g8. Probably king g8 slightly better. But then at the end, White plays rook takes b7, and
Yeah,
A5, A3, knight D3. It's kind of like a mess because the white rook's cleaning up black's queen side, but white's bishop is just trapped on G3. So it's a very, very weird
it's
position.
a bad piece. Well, any thought of playing F4 to unentomb your bishop?
Maybe, but I mean, black takes it at the moment, right?
Yeah, you can't do it now. But if they go for that rook C1 thing.
Yeah. You might be able to. If black's knight is on D3, though, you'll still not be able to do it, right? The line I gave...
Sorry, rook C1, you don't have time for F4 because your rook is hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I would say this, like, if white can play F4, like, for sure, like, it's like a strong consideration. But there's two things that can go wrong with it. Well, and there it is, F4. There's two things that can go wrong. One is...
See it. Let's go Falk. But...
One is sometimes black can just go E4 and E3. Right? And the other is sometimes black can just take the pawn on F4. So we'll see.
It looks like he can take it. Well, I mean...
Somehow the
David,
other...
have you shared the scores of the lessons with the chat at all?
No, I wanted to, like, think it over. Like, I took, like, notes, and I've got tentative scores, but I wanted to, like, make sure that I really compared them with each other in my head as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
This game, they've got a minute less than Bob, Joe, Jim, and Falk. So actually, let's check on this game for a little bit. F4 seems to be available, but it would be knight F3 check. Rangel had seen that with 10 seconds on his clock.
Oh, okay, I see.
Wow.
Is this a live position?
This is a live position. And Rangel seems to be pretty good with 10 seconds on his clock.
Knight C4 for black. Knight C4.
Yeah, black's definitely got the advantage in this position. Rook H4 is really desirable as well. Doesn't find that.
Oh, this is just...
Rook H4 to B4 would have been powerful. This is pretty good, too.
Unless
he's got knight F3 check here. He's got knight F3 check, but that might not even be that good because white has rook E6 coming up. So he's just improving his position.
This is just going to be madness.
Yeah, the king is relentless. The kid is just, he's still on him.
In the time scramble.
Rangel's playing great. It's interesting. You want to play rook A8 without hanging knight B5, but you don't want to play B4 knight to A4. So it's like tricky to figure out how to progress, even though black's sort of done everything they want to do at this point. Still hard, but I think maybe C4 could be good.
King
F7.
Oh, that's a good move from Nargif, but black's going to try knight F3, I think.
Nah, F4 here.
Oh, I'm on the...
Knight F3 with knight D4 check, stopping rook E6 would be really good.
Oh, knight D4.
Yeah, but G4 was like a nice try to get this E4 square, and you see like Nargif he's reaping.
I'm looking on stream. I think we're a little behind.
Yeah, I am as well. I just flipped it over to chess.com.
He's reaping pawns now. Yeah, it's better to leave the pawn hanging on F5 for a move and delay white playing knight E4 by one move than to have saved the pawn on F4.
Oh man.
Well,
that loses a pawn. Knight takes F7. Knight takes the rooks there. Sorry.
I didn't understand the king retreating, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is happening fast. Nobody understands everything here.
Okay, I like.
Okay, now he tries C4. White doesn't want to take it and doesn't.
Good. Yeah, nicely done.
Yeah, otherwise suddenly you're like, oh, what do I do about rook B2? But rook A6 is still tough. Oh, man.
Me and Nargave hold it down for the D4 players in this competition.
That's right. You were the only two today.
Man, I
think we're the only two, unless the new people.
I prepared all this. I shouldn't say prepared because I wasn't looking at theory, but I started playing all this bishop A6 stuff specifically to play against Seth, and I got what I wanted, and then I just freaking tilted off the position.
Yeah, that seems
that's a fork.
Yeah, that's a fork. Seemed like it's sort of a tell. Well, I just was like, I was like, knight moved again.
Yeah, no, it was knight E4 is D5, and like the position's probably.
Yeah, knight E4 I think is a move. But
knight E4 is not really a move there. I should have just played D5.
But the next knight move was
terrible. Yes.
Yeah.
Terrible. I totally. Anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways, it happens.
Yeah, I had no business winning that first.
This part is so tense.
Yeah, you did.
So tense.
That's what happens. You know.
Yeah.
It's chess.
That blunder was.
Oh, flag.
Nice.
Flag up material.
No,
up a piece.
not
Yeah.
nice.
Oh my
Toddler
god.
Ringo says in the chat, toddler odds.
Madness.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
poor guy.
Oh,
That
man.
serves me for playing with a toddler.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
I'm
at least
sorry,
we all saw
man.
what you were dealing with.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, but I got tweets about it.
Anyway, it's okay.
Oh, there's a second. There's a
I-
second.
I had toddler odds, I think.
Yeah.
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 I
It's
was
all
getting
good.
texts about it, and I'm like, yeah.
So,
totally.
Nargave, how much do I have to pay you to ship your kids over to whatever person I'm playing in the final tournament? I'll like cover it as like a babysitter fee and like shipping and handling.
Yeah.
Shipping
Wait,
and
what's
handling.
your?
You know
what's
what?
your-
These are actually normal conditions for me.
Oh, let's go fall. Here we go.
Cool.
This
what's
is
your-
accurate.
What's your kid's fees? I'll pay him to set up. No.
Yeah, so that was a fun game though. Like, I mean, I actually thought he had a couple chances to put me away there. I thought he was gonna sack the knight on B2 and then take with the queen.
That's what I wanted to do.
C3.
That was
But-
Let's
the
go.
plan,
Let's go, Falk.
or part of the
But
plan.
there was also an interesting little tactic where if you took the rook, like you traded rooks on D or on E2, then I think that also just won a pawn. But yeah, I'd have to go back and look at it again. I thought I was pretty dead there for a bit. So
I thought you were pretty dead for a while there, and then we got in time pressure in the ending, and I dropped that pawn, and then I was just super dead.
yeah.
Then I blundered the piece too, or something. I think.
Well, actually, it was still pretty dangerous because I think, yeah,
Sorry, I'm looking at Falk's game.
I know.
Yeah,
that's okay.
it's
The
not
technique is
easy.
out of this world.
G5.
With
Oh
3
my
extra pawns, and he won't push the F pawn.
Oh my god, this is terrifying me. Just move the rook. Just move the rook.
Wait. Ty
Thank
and
you.
Falk are still playing, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're down to like 10. Falks should convert this endgame pretty easily. Just rook A3 and.
I mean,
Let
just
me
move the
start
king
following.
up. Bring the
Lars,
king and the
super
pawn
nice
forward.
games.
The white king is just not even
I
there.
I don't like rook E4 if you're trying to defend it, but doesn't I
I
guess.
actually have to pull this up. I can't see the game right now, so
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all right.
now
It'll be
got
done by
it.
the time you pull it
This
up.
will be okay. Okay, he's got it now.
Yeah, he cut him off.
Right F or King F4. Yeah.
Come on, keep playing. Keep finding the
Oh.
truth.
This is
okay,
good.
let's watch.
Thank God.
Whew. That was incredible levels of stress in those 2 time scrambles there. This round. Oh man, Falk cutting the king off even worse. He's like, get even further away from F1. I want to make sure this pawn queens.
Yeah. Yeah, that works.
You'll need to play F2 at some point if you're going to queen. That's a precondition.
Nah.
I'm wrong apparently.
Alex doesn't approve.
Okay,
so.
don't flag.
Ooh,
Don't
is he going to
flag,
flag? Where is he headed?
What is he doing?
Oh no, this is pressure.
This is great.
Yeah. For anyone
There's
out there who
some
doesn't realize it, like playing on this show is different than playing random games
Yeah.
at home. There's like you see these players on this show making mistakes that they never
G3.
play when I just watch them normally.
Although
G3.
I mean,
I
maybe
like
the king will go back to H4. Who knows when the preparations will be complete for
Okay.
G3.
Looks
Okay.
pretty good.
You know what? He was just toying with us.
yeah, I mean,
Okay, cool.
Uh-oh.
fine because the white king is.
I should
We're
tell
good.
him Kostia's not watching, so he's not giving Kostia a heart attack. He might as well just win the game. Like, there's no need to do this. Kostia's already commentating the Pan Ams.
Oh, is he gonna make him do a ladder mate? Nope, not quite.
All right.
Okay. Let's go fall.
And that's the
That
checkmate.
was good.
And it was a lot going on, so I don't know if I even caught it all.
You okay?
But I believe all 3 matches are 2-0 scores
Yeah.
today. So none of the players who lost the first game managed to do one of the must-win situation wins that you guys are going to need when it comes to the finals. But hopefully this gives you all like a somewhat useful taste of that final tournament in 2 weeks, what it's going to be like to play if you're up a game or down a game over the course of, you're going to play 3 different matches. So over the course of that tournament, there's almost certainly going to be a match where you like start out down one game and a match where you start out up one game. There's like a very good chance that you'll get to experience these situations. So now you've got some idea what it might feel like. I'm going to go take over toddler duty over here at my place in a minute. We're going to send a raid over to Collegiate Chess, which is where Kostya is commentating the next round of the Pan Ams. It's fantastic for anybody who's watching us right now. Like, I strongly recommend you go watch that. Kostya's going to do really good commentary. The games are going to be really interesting. There's a lot of strong grandmasters on these collegiate teams. And it's also really cool sometimes to see this strong grandmasters playing against like 23 and 2400 players who are, really like strong chess players, but then they face like basically like a real professional, and they it's an interesting battle. So we're gonna send you all over there with a raid in a second. You don't need to do anything except like click join the raid. But to the players, thank you very much for the lessons you gave today. I heard good reviews of them in the chat. It sounded like people actually like learned stuff from your lessons. It wasn't just like a cool exercise for you to do, but like people were actually learning from it. So
thanks for having us on.
Yeah, it was great.
People sometimes ask like, at what level can I be a chess teacher, right? You get people coming in like, how many weeks is it going to take for me to be a GM? And like how good do I need to be like a chess teacher? And I heard somebody ask Kostya this recently the other day, and he's like, well, I mean, you can like try and teach chess at any level, but like people may or may not pay you for your lessons, right? Like if you're rated like 350 and you've been playing for 2 weeks. But I actually believe that players of almost any level have something that they could teach, and I also think that teaching is sometimes a good way of like reinforcing what you have learned or tried to learn. So I hope that some of you feel like actually you like deepened your knowledge or your confidence about something, either by preparing the lesson or delivering the lesson, or somewhere in this experience. I hope it was useful for all of you. But we'll have to talk more about it later. I'm going to send a raid off. Big thanks to all the coaches as well who aren't on here today, but who are working hard behind the scenes. Their work is, very important in the improvement that the players are making over the course of this season. And, without them, there would be no Ultimate Sensei. So they're not on screen all the time with us, but there are some links so you can go follow them and follow their lessons. Everybody, please do that. My big thanks to them, as well as to all of you for, putting yourselves on the line in front of everybody. And now let us see if I can get this raid in correctly. Raid Collegiate Chess League. There we go. You can go say hi to Kostya. And I wish everybody a wonderful chess evening. Ta-ta.
5, and if bishop g7.